This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latin, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down.
Hola, how you
This
doing?
is the
Welcome to the Situation Room. This is Kenya's biggest conversation. Welcome to Thursday as well. Today is the 28th day of the year. And here we are, Nduoko and Siti Muga in the house as well. Good morning, lady.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm very well.
Good to see you.
Good to see you too.
How are things going?
And good to be seen.
Oh, good.
Things are where they were yesterday.
Really?
They haven't moved.
Not possible.
No. Still the same.
Okay.
They are not going.
Things are not going. Oh, no.
The question, of course, that begs to be asked is where were they supposed to go to?
Where were they supposed to be going is the question. Eh? Okay. Well, I have a question. I'm looking for the exact English word or definition for mfalme.
And you don't want king or emperor,
No, I don't know. That's what it is. King.
supreme leader.
You know why that makes me laugh.
I know it's not one
Supreme
word.
Not great leader. Okay.
Supreme, this one.
Mfalme.
Mfalme.
Loosely translated into king.
Okay.
Why I call it supreme leader? Because there's just besides God, it's you.
Ah, voila. Okay.
And remember, any translation from, say, a vernacular language or Kiswahili from English, you can't limit it to one word. Because our words, by the way, the very nature of them, they were descriptive. And sometimes to be descriptive, it can't be one word. Perhaps needs to be a phrase.
But why? Why are you thinking of Mfalme this morning?
I don't know. It's been in my head like since 6 p.m. last night. It just kept ringing. Mfalme. And then I woke up this morning and again, Mfalme was in my mind.
You didn't see an advert of Kukumfalme?
Could be something. Maybe somebody's about to crown me. I don't know. I don't know.
One of the things we never do in this show, we don't ask about the company you keep. And I think since we've never asked that question,
Your Majesty.
There you go. You see, people are falling in line. Well done. How may I help you this morning?
The thing about Mfalme, though, in that translation, it is very masculine.
Oh, get out of here.
yes, it is.
So
It
what's
is.
queen in Swahili?
Malkia.
That's true, it is. Malkia. I like the sound of that, actually. I do. I'm feeling quite royal this morning, in case you've not noticed.
Okay, for you, what is Lord in Kiswahili?
Are you asking me? Bwana. It's not Bwana.
All right, we'll go with Bwana for the time being.
No, as in like Bwana Nakusifu Bwana. Is it not?
That's how you picked it from. Makes sense.
Yeah? Okay.
So if we take that view,
Bwana wangu.
yeah, so your husband is a Lord.
Excuse me?
Si ni bwana wako?
So I'm the lady. Lord, lady,
Sawa.
Wewe ni mwanamke.
king, queen.
Sawa, but your husband is Bwana.
So by your definition, not ours, he is a Lord.
I'm so confused.
Anyway, don't worry. Live to live another day.
Okay. Well, there you go. There's your grammar lesson for the morning.
Okay. Welcome to the show. City, you well?
I'm very well, thank you, sir.
Clearly. Hiya. So today we have a number of conversations as well as looking at the headlines in the papers and asking ourselves very many questions. But that robot that was donated by the UNDP and the Japanese to the Kenyan government. Have you seen it? Have you heard about it?
I've heard about it, but since the day it was launched, I don't know where it is resident or they would be
Perhaps you
resident.
could explain what it is this robot is supposed to do.
Right. So the United Nations Development Programme then donated to Kenya through the Ministry of Health a couple of robots.
Oh, couple.
Yeah. That would be...
Couple usually means two.
Yeah. So it was two. It was two, right? Their aim or their job is to help in the fight against COVID. So it would be able to detect if you're wearing a mask. It would remind you, CT, you've not washed your hands. It would do things like this, depending on where you kept it, going around. You've not washed your hands. You've not sanitized over here. You're not wearing a mask. It's due diligence, reminding people to, do these things.
So it's a sales gimmick.
Yes.
Well, I'm asking because UNDP don't manufacture things.
No.
Okay.
It's the government of Japan. UNDP.
Japan, yes.
With
They're in
funding
the
from the government of
they're
Japan.
they're in the manufacturing business. They have entities rather within Japan who do that. So the robots will are placed at Afia House.
No.
No.
The robots are to be stationed at KNH, JKIA, and Bagathi Hospital.
So there are 3 robots.
Yeah, to be utilized in disinfecting controlled environments and disseminating public health messages.
Okay. And how long does their battery last?
I'm sure if they'd be plugged up somewhere. And
Inatumia majira.
Okay. That is
You
fine.
wind it
You wind, that is perfectly understandable. And after how long do you need to renew? Do you need to service it? That's a
These
question.
operational details we do not have. However, what we do know is that they will be helping in the fight against COVID. Sending out the messages and helping in sanitization and,
Yes, and
general
scaring sick
cleanliness.
people to death.
Children too.
Children love robots.
Yeah?
Just think that'll talk to them and looks like them. They will love it. So we'll be talking to the UN resident representative for Kenya, and he will explain all these things. Plus, what else the UNDP is doing. Not just with COVID, but post-COVID support strategy. Okay, recovery strategy. But anyway, let's start with this COVID in numbers and see how we are doing.
101 million, that's what we're looking at around the world now. 101,433,090 cases of COVID globally. 2,184,120 deaths so far. The bulk of the numbers that we see or continue to be reported are recoveries. We're looking at the United States now with 26 million cases. Last Friday, so a week ago, essentially, between last Friday and there were 25 million cases. The US has reported 1 million cases in 7 days. The numbers still continue to rise here, and it's all talk around the vaccine and such, but people are still sick. Looking at news that came out of Brazil yesterday, Brazil has now crossed the 9 million mark. They are still having some issues here. Government is saying that they're doing everything that they can, which we know is not the case. The problem is that there's still a lot of international cross-border travel. It just seems like, okay, we have a big problem over here, but you still have a whole lot of other people who are traveling, moving about. There's really no lockdown. Everybody coming from the government, the message has been, we'll deal with it as it comes along. But the numbers are rising. They're only 1 million away from India, and they have a fifth of India's population. So there's a problem here. And how they'll deal with it is important. If we look at the numbers...
So there's one thing that the government is doing in Brazil. What's the people's reaction to the government's handling of COVID in Brazil?
Tell me.
I don't know, man.
They are unhappy. Let me put a word to it. If you were to even just peruse the social media platforms that relate to that country, many have even wanted the president to resign. This began even before COVID, but now with COVID, the clamor for his resignation or removal has risen. Yes. But unfortunately, for people who want him out, he did come in on a fairly popular platform.
He did. But But let's just look at what we are looking at. And why looking at Brazil specifically this morning? We know that coming out of the United States, there are 3 countries that travel bans have been placed on COVID related from the United States. And it's South Africa, the UK, and Brazil because of the new strains that have been found there. So you can imagine Brazil was already at a stage whereby they were recording high numbers of COVID every day, right? Then they find this second strain, and already they were not able to handle it. People were lining up in hospitals, not being able to get oxygen. Some people were suffocating, and this is where a lot of the deaths came from. That because of by the time they got to hospital, it had gotten too late. And then their lives essentially were not able to be saved. Not because they wouldn't have been able to manage it, but the mechanics of it, and they were not able to be provided with what they needed. And there were too many people looking for a commodity that was not available in the numbers in which it was needed. And that's how people then lost their lives. Now, add the second strain that develops much faster. People die much easier. And here we are with what they were recording, 63,000, 65,000, 78,000 cases in one day on a population of 230 million, right? And then now people are still traveling. There was no clear-cut measure that was taken from President B's administration. Now Biden administration has said, thank you very much, but we're not accepting any more visitors from Brazil. We're not accepting them from South Africa. We're not accepting them from the UK in a bid to fight reinfections. So they've got a problem on their hands here. And I don't even know if just from what I'm looking at right now, the people of Brazil are basically begging their president to say, lock us down. They're basically begging him to say, put these restrictions in place so that people stop getting sick, because you'd rather stay home without food, just looking at one article now, we'd rather stay home without food than end up in lines in hospital without medication. So that's what they're looking at now. Okay?
Okay.
It's a tough one.
That's a tough one for Brazil. And those are the countries. I've seen a story here by Al Jazeera where they started rolling out 2 million doses of 2 million.
Of vaccines.
2 million.
Yeah.
2 million.
Yeah.
That's just vaccinating 1 million people.
Yeah. It's vaccinating 1 million people. Yes,
Surely.
that's what it is. Right, so let's look at South Africa quickly in a minute. South Africa yesterday recorded 7,070 new cases, 753 new deaths in the country yesterday. So you can imagine everywhere across the globe, everybody's talking about new strain in South Africa, new strain in South Africa. There's a problem here. Let's study this a little bit more, because now we are seeing people who may have traveled to the United States, traveled to the UK, originally from South Africa, and maybe carrying this new strain. So a lot of focus now is on South Africa and what they've been able to find. There's a little bit of pressure on Ramaphosa's government to say, come on, guys, what are your researchers doing to find out what exactly this is happening and where this all came from? This, of course, in line with, at the same time, trying to bring in vaccines, trying to treat the sick, then at the same time not having to do this research in terms of what is happening. So it's a bit of a mess here.
Hey, okay. So the conversation wants to twist into South Africa is the origin of the second strain.
Yes.
Oh,
That's where it's going.
It's been going in that direction for quite some
That's where
time.
it's going.
Quite some time.
It's you guys now.
It's always someone else, isn't it?
Yeah.
And yet, if you were to look at viruses that are related to flu, remember, this COVID virus was at first considered to be just another flu virus, all right? Now, people who've had flu viruses around and among them for the longest time also have varieties and strains of this thing.
Yeah.
So, in my view, the likelihood of the mutation that we speak of, especially during the cold season, because that's when the mutations for the flu virus would replicate, I would argue that they are more likely to actually generate a new strain rather than places that don't have the problems that they have. Remember, flu shots are renewed and reinvigorated with every passing year to cater for that mutation. Okay? So, yes, I'm afraid I have to read politics into this.
There's quite a bit of it coming out.
I have to read politics into this because, first of all, it's China.
Yeah.
Okay? Is it not possible for the Chinese to have just been the first one to detect it? Must the West be the first to detect everything?
Yeah. How else would you get any kind of global expediency if you were not the first in everything? Come on.
So now, blocking travel of people coming from South Africa, and now it's Southern Africa. It's
Yes.
moved from South Africa, it's Southern Africa, coming all the way up to Tanzania.
You know,
Okay. Anyway, let's take a break. We are live streaming on Spice FM KE on YouTube, on Facebook, and Twitter. And we are also on www.spicefm.co.ke. It's 6:15. Let's see who's online after this weather break. Good morning.
Did you know that knowing your HIV status is simple? You can visit your nearest health center where you will be tested for free, or you can test yourself using the self-kits sold at chemists for 500 shillings only. If you test HIV positive, don't fear, because there is medication that will allow you to live your normal life. You will also be counseled on how to live with HIV and fulfill your life goals or dreams. Knowing your HIV status as a parent is beneficial for yourself and your loved ones. Expectant mothers with HIV, did you know it's possible to deliver a healthy, uninfected baby? Visit a health facility near you during your antenatal visits to get proper information, advice, and treatment for HIV. HIV treatment can improve your overall health and can protect an unborn baby from contracting HIV before, during delivery, and after birth. We must not exclude or discriminate against our HIV-positive counterparts because living with the virus is not a curse. Follow the Ministry of Health's instructions to protect ourselves from HIV and also to protect ourselves from the coronavirus that causes COVID-19. Do you know your status? This message has been brought to you by the National AIDS Control Council.
Clear conditions, still dark in Nairobi at 16 degrees. We're going to look at highs of 28 today, coming down to lows of 15. Looking like it's going to be a clear day throughout this Thursday. It's 11 degrees in Nyeri and clear. Highs of 25 today is what we'll see, coming down to lows of 12. Clear conditions in Nakuru this morning at 14, highs of 28 and lows of 13. It's going to be a bright, sunny day in Eldoret. Currently at 11 degrees, it's clear conditions, highs of 25 and lows of 12. And clear conditions in Kisumu as well, going to highs of 30. 31 will be the high in Kakamega today. It's clear at 15. Partly cloudy conditions in Mombasa at 25, going to highs of 33. 31 will be the high in Malindi. Mostly cloudy conditions at the moment at 25. It's mostly clear in Kampala, stepping out of Kenya, going to highs of 27 today. Dar es Salaam in Tanzania, 26, mostly clear, highs of 32 and lows of 25. There's a 95% chance of rain in Johannesburg this morning, and the showers will start any minute. 18 degrees at the moment, going to highs of 23. It's clear conditions in Lagos for now, likely to have foggy skies later, highs of 33 and lows of 24. Kinshasa is clear at 23, highs of 30. -4 in Beijing, ringing in the afternoon, sunny conditions however. Today it's going to get bitingly cold, down to lows of -12. Paris, light rain at 9, going to highs of 14 today. 100% chance of rain throughout this Thursday. It's also raining in London at 8, going to highs of 13. And Wednesday night is cloudy in New York. Going into Thursday morning, we'll see highs of 4 and lows of -3.
Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise. Yeah.
You're listening to Spice FM. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4.
Who is online?
Alex and Robert, the Mbogos, are online today and saying good morning. One Mbogo is in Nyeri, the other one is in Mombasa, and everybody's saying good morning. Frank Minor says good morning, my people. Kaptumo Nandi is where Chebo Abdallah Valley is tuned in from. And hot, says Beda Ashley, representing in Machakos. Cyprian Mwaura believes my Swahili has improved greatly and he loves the sound of it. Says good morning as well. BM Shiholo says, Okay, something about Mau and Britain. Okay, but he's online anyway, so it's great. Leban Tanui Kapte says, good morning from Koryot Nandi. And Molid Sahal says, good morning, Spice Team. He's watching from Somalia. Master Dan, good morning, and says, Beijing is listening. He's going to have his COVID vaccine in the next 2 hours, and guess what? It's free of charge in China.
Okay.
Dagi Oguta says, good morning, my people in Situation Room. He's not feeling too well, unfortunately. Hope you feel
Get
better.
well soon, man.
Tune in from Nyabola in Kisumu. Sir Haron Wafula, good morning, sir. Is tuning from Siaya and says, let the conversation continue. Good to have you guys online this morning. Good morning.
Yeah.
Laban is also tuned in, as is Kipketer Chebore, Nikiwa Kip Kigenda, Nandi County, Nikondani Kamakawa, Nandi County, 0001?
It's Nandi.
Okay.
It's
Good morning,
Nandi.
everybody.
Nandi is in Nandi.
Okay.
Okay, City. Today's proverb.
Proverb ya leo. You know, every time I get comments about the proverbs, I get the impression that people like proverbs African proverbs that have animals and have some cryptic message to them. Like hyena look at the moon and dances left-leggedly. Now,
Dances what?
left-leggedly.
Okay. Some humans I know do that. Anyway.
Now, some things
But looking
like
at the moon. These humans that you interact with.
some proverbs are actually very simple and straightforward, like the one I want to mention today.
Yeah.
So straightforward that you even wonder, why is it a proverb? That's the whole point. Not every proverb is supposed to be cryptic.
Huh?
Good men must die, but death cannot kill their names.
You've repeated this one.
No. I said something similar. There are many
That's
African
something close.
proverbs that sound similar, but it's not exactly the same. Yes.
Good men must die, but death.
Cannot kill their names.
C'est vrai.
Is true.
Vraiment.
Yeah. Okay, let's look at the headlines in the papers then.
Okay.
Okay.
Suspect in 7-hour cat and mouse drama. Murder probe. Man wanted in a case where a woman was tied up and set on fire was arrested yesterday after days of evading the police. In the dramatic showdown, he threatened to commit suicide as a mob bayed for his blood. This is on the front page of the Standard. Going into page 4 today to look at exactly what happened. Yet another story, unfortunately, of death and taking that. So, I mean, it's a long story, but looking into the details of it, a suspect has been linked to killing held after day-long siege. So George Charles Olwen was preparing for another day of cat and mouse with police officers who had been looking for him since January 22nd. When something caught his attention, he knew his goose was cooked when 5 police cars pulled up outside his flat yesterday morning. Senior Superintendent Charles Wambugu, the officer commanding the 20 policemen, was certain that all that would take a few minutes. After all, it was one man against the world. However, unknown to the police, the siege at house number 17 on the 6th floor of a flat in Kayole would not be a simple job. It seemed to be an easy extraction, in and out. 5 minutes at most, an officer told the Standard about the siege. 8 hours later, unfortunately, a standoff between the officers and Olwen continued, playing out even on social media. So it was all over social media, back and forth in terms of what was happening. They were looking for this gentleman who is said to have, who is alleged to have killed a woman a few weeks ago. So they chased him for the better part of the day yesterday. At some point, when they had now basically gotten him in a corner, he then threatened to take his own life by jumping off of the apartment. He had asked the police to leave. Of course, they did not agree, and he said now the only way to end this was for him to leave completely this earthly existence.
Aye.
So it took a long time. There was an order for his arrest, which he defied, and there was a mob then that formed thereafter. Police had to disperse the mob with tear gas and get them out of the place before they now arrested him.
So it's a very
It's a very long, winding story about exactly what happened. But they had been looking for him for weeks. He's alleged to have killed his girlfriend and set her on fire. Yeah. So they've been looking for him for some time. So they finally caught up with him yesterday, and for 8 hours he's been. They went through this back and forth before they now got him into custody.
You know, the DCI released a video. Now DCI's communication is, getting up there. So they put this up on Twitter, and they go. So they released a video which even has a voiceover.
It does.
Right? And in the video you hear the officers speaking to the man and telling him, you know what, you also have a right to get your side heard. So everybody is saying that you killed. We don't necessarily believe that you killed, but you're a suspect for now. It's a judge who will determine this. So you will be taken before a magistrate, and if you feel that you'd like to appeal, you can take it before a court. So you have all the avenues. Please, just come
Use
out.
them.
Yeah, just come out. Let's go with you. Don't do this. Don't. It was quite something. On the same page 4 of the Standard, there's this other very disturbing story of police holding a 70-year-old man in connection with the killing of his parents in Muyo village, Makueni County yesterday. The suspect accosted his father, Ndivondolo, who is 100 years old, who was in the kitchen preparing tea, and hacked him to death with a machete before attacking his mother, who had escaped to a nearby maize plantation. The suspect is under police guard at Machako's Level 6 hospital, where he was rushed after sustaining self-inflicted stab wounds. So we are talking about a 70-year-old man. This is already a grandfather to several. Being accused of killing his parents. The father is 100 years old.
Good grief.
What is this?
What is going on?
Because family members believe a land dispute could be behind the killing. Land dispute. You've been alive for 70 years.
Your father is 100.
Mary Ndunga said she was milking cows when she was called by her mother after hearing a distress call from her grandfather's home. There was a loud cry from my grandfather's home, and my mother told me to go and check what was happening, but I declined. I saw my father running, but we didn't know that he had killed his parents. She says the suspect had threatened to kill someone before, but they never took him seriously. This is okay. It's a very sad one.
Remember that committee that was set up to
Mental health.
Yes. You see, that report that we don't know the details of, I don't know whether they expanded their work to schools, because we have a serious problem in our schools.
What's that? What's happening in the schools?
Well, what's happening in our schools is a certain tradition of burning things. It hasn't disappeared, but what concerns me is secondary school and university. The intake of drugs. It's on the increase. It's something we will discuss in greater detail and call in people who are experts in this field. But there is an entire disintegration of the social fabric as we know it, with more and more bizarre things happening. People aren't reporting things that didn't happen. They're reporting things which have happened.
Yep.
And because we live in this digital age, it is easier to know what is happening everywhere. And the number of these bizarre things, they're increasing.
Yeah.
They're not reducing, they're not diminishing.
By the day.
Yes.
So we've got drug addiction or drug intake in institutions of learning.
Yes, institutions of learning.
And then we are also seeing now a lot of violence in the schools.
Family strife resulting in deaths. And brutal.
For a 70-year-old man to kill a 100-year-old father.
Over a land dispute? Over a land dispute.
My friend, you know, some of these things have been happening for some time.
Yeah.
And I am certain that if we were to ask reporters and we have to ask stringers and people who work in the far-flung areas of this country, we would truly be amazed about the bizarre happenings right across the country.
Yeah.
But this hacking people to death seems to have taken...
It's like the norm. You kill someone, you burn them,
But, you know, for me, the more perplexing matter is that is the option that you have.
Yeah.
You get, as in, before, when it used to be, even if you have an argument with somebody, even if then you need to argue and then find a way to thrash it out. For me, that the decision you take is to take somebody else's life. That means that really, in terms of, it's far gone.
It's personal.
It's personal, and it's far
emotional.
gone. Yeah.
Very.
Because someone suddenly has absolutely no understanding of the consequences, meaning it's like their life is forfeit.
Yep.
But this is something that they must do. How do you tie
Exactly.
somebody up and then burn them?
And the thing is, you've taken the decision to take somebody's life. You know that other people are going to find out about it. That means you're all right with taking somebody else's life, and you're all right to live with the consequences. That thing has gotten to you so much that you can take somebody else's life and you're all right to live with the consequences.
See, that sort of emotional turmoil, that is where the mental stability subject comes in.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly.
Remember what Dr. Frank Jenga told us about that report? He started by saying the situation is dire. It is bad. He said, it's bad, guys. It's bad. Their report, their first recommendation is for the government to declare mental health a national emergency. Now, the government has not declared it a national emergency 7 months later. So now that tells you about the mental health of our government.
May I ask you a question, Eric? Does mental health have anything to do with massive construction business?
Probably.
Does it have to do with infrastructure?
Like
Probably.
building roads.
Yes, or building houses.
Or taking loans.
Or taking loan. Because if it did, then we would prioritize it. But if it doesn't fall in that category of either increasing
If it has no income generating
side to it, like borrowing 1 trillion shillings, or
Raising the debt ceiling.
or putting a skyscraper, or building a flyover, or building a highway with 6 lanes.
Yeah.
If it doesn't fall in that category,
Forget it.
sorry,
It's not an emergency.
how can it possibly be?
Let's take a break and see what's happening on the roads this morning. Good morning. It's 28 minutes to 7.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day. Spice up your life 24/7 around the world non-stop. This is Spice FM.
Health is an important component in the life of a human being. A nation's prosperity is pegged on its citizens' well-being and proper health infrastructure. The right to health is a fundamental human right guaranteed in the Constitution of Kenya, but during this pandemic period, the health sector has faced many challenges that have affected their services. Pregnant women and those seeking reproductive health services have been the most affected. On our second episode of Kiocha Hoja, we will focus on the effects of COVID-19 on women's health and how they can be cushioned in the future. When it comes to bridging the information gap to help strengthen the agricultural sector in our country, you can always rely on Farm Kenya to be the glue holding everything together. And now, courtesy of the partnership with Farmster, things couldn't be better. Introducing Farm Kenya platform, and it goes like this. Our SMS service will help farmers upload and publish their products without smartphones, while the Farm Kenya app will allow buyers locate, purchase from, and engage the farmers directly. So if you're a farmer, send a free SMS to 40446 and connect with buyers free for life. That's 40446. If you're a buyer looking for local produce, download the Farm Kenya app from Google Play Store or the Apple Store for free. Remember, ukulima sio shamba pekee. Ukulima ni digital. Ukulima ni Farm Kenya platform.
Kuimarisha Kenya ni jukumu la Farm Kenya.
Brought to you by Farm Kenya and Farmster, working to secure your growth.
So folks got up this morning at 5 o'clock to get onto Mombasa Road, and guess what? They're still there. Mombasa Road has already started to build up this Thursday morning, and this is all the way from the Way Bridge at Mlolongo today, heading then out towards the airport turnoff and then out towards Cabana. So that's slow, moving very slowly this morning. Taking a look at what's going on Thika Road as you're trying to get into the CBD. It's a little bit slow right now as you get to Pangani. The tunnel there, everybody converges for a little bit of breakfast before trying to get into the CBD, because that's what it is. You're not going anywhere right now, and it's if you do, you're actually going there very slowly. Kiambu Road already building up. As far as the eye can see, traffic has started. And then trying to connect with Thika Road. This one is going to be interesting this morning. So, if you're headed in that direction, just know that that's what the traffic looks like right now. Outer Ring building up as well as you're trying to get into the eastern bypass, onto the eastern bypass rather. That slows down for you as you're connecting from Mombasa Road. But then throughout, it should be fine. The southern bypass looks fine as you're getting out to other parts of the city. Coming out of Westlands, you can use the Red Hill bypass. That's open. It clogs up for you on Uhuru Highway. So everywhere is starting to clog up a little bit this morning as far as traffic is concerned. Let us know what you might see. Spice of MKE on Twitter. We'll take a look in half an hour and see how things have changed.
Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise. Yeah.
You're listening to Spice FM. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
What are you looking at?
I'm actually looking at two things.
Yeah.
Actually, three things, because they're on the same page. One I will not discuss. The other one I am certainly not going to discuss. And the third one I will most certainly not discuss.
Okay.
So let me think of something else that I'm able to discuss. There's an article that was written in The Nation. Let me get the details so that we understand it. I was mentioning it in passing, but something that I wanted to talk about by Dr. Elizabeth Merab. Okay, she's a health reporter for The Nation, and it was about the new FDA-approved injection, whose rollout will afford a certain degree of, should we say, ease for people who are HIV positive in the sense of the word.
Right.
Instead of the cocktails of ARVs that people have to take on a daily basis, this will be a once-a-month injection. Once a month. So, essentially, just 12 jabs. One,
A year.
one. Yes, per year. And you're done. Now, it has been proven to be safe. It has also been proven that it affords the sort of privacy that the tablets did not provide. Because if you go into, say, a clinical room and all that you're being injected, one doesn't have to call you to go and take drugs or anything. You simply lie like any other patient.
Yep.
But the doctor knows that you have come for this jab,
Yep.
and you likely get the jab. Now, why do I bring this story up? You see, when we look at COVID, we sometimes fail to relate it to other pandemics, other diseases that have ravaged the planet, and the progress that has been made. In terms of time, and with relation to COVID, it's still early days yet with COVID. And even as it's early days yet, whatever is happening may be alarming. But in due course, believe me, right now, Johnson & Johnson have come up with a vaccine that you only take once. Not the two jabs.
Just a single shot.
Single shot, you're done. I am certain that others are going to come up with an even higher efficacy than the ones that we already have. And the ones we already have will be improved on, because even as people keep taking them, data is being harvested and they're getting to understand a lot more about it. With any disease, there is always progress being made. But we panic because of the effect that it has on us currently, and we're unable to give time to pause and ask and understand that even irrespective of how deadly it isn't a silver lining. The reality is medical science is fairly advanced, and a solution will be found. Something that is comfortable and effective, and which can give you guarantees. Who would have thought, for instance, that women who are HIV positive had a chance of giving birth to children who would test negative at birth? Who would have thought? Again, Nevirapine made that possible. Women who had this administered to them at the appropriate time were given that high chance of actually having children who are HIV negative. So, even with COVID, the likelihood of it being overcome is higher than it causing continuous harm.
Yeah. I think that's very good news, hearing of that single jab. Because one of the things that also stigmatizes HIV is that taking of the concoction of medicine.
Yes.
In fact, they've reduced, right? There is a time when there used to be somebody would take,
You are a walking pharmacy.
my goodness.
Essentially, yes.
And it was a daily dose that you were taking. This cocktail.
Pharmacy, there are many, and at
20
specific
odd
times.
some.
Specific times.
Yes.
You must have this
At
at
specific,
this
so,
time.
so you carry it with you. Then it got down to 3. Actually, there are places where,
Yeah.
if you can afford it, it's just 1 tablet. But it's still daily. But usually you'll find that that 1 tablet is a concoction.
It's a
Mixture
many.
of this and the other and the other. Because the thing about ARVs and why they were multiple or quadruple was because they did different things.
Yeah.
One had the function of, say, blocking the virus from getting into you. One had the function of deceiving the virus so that it goes in the direction it shouldn't go. What all these functions put together, that's why they were called antiretroviral, and that's why it was a concoction. This combination, and that's why it was also called a combination therapy. It enabled you to fight whatever way the virus chose to attack. There'd be some drug that was preventing it from achieving its goal. Yes. And all that they're saying can now be found in.
1 a month.
But it isn't only that. There have been researches into something you call microbicides, gels that could be used again in the same prevention. There's been some advancement made in gels, microbicide gels that women can use, or products that they can use of that nature, which also assures them privacy, but it also assures them protection. So science never stops. Now, why am I saying this? The development of these things don't take a year, sometimes even up to 10 years. And there's a cost element to it. So when they now have a drug and they want to sell, there's a reason why they have to sell it, because some cost has to be recovered. However, COVID was different, because COVID provided an opportunity, not just for competition, but for collaboration like we've never seen before.
Yep.
And often they would be starting not from scratch. They would be starting from a point that was already understood about viruses, sharing information, and then moving on to work.
Next
And
stage.
also engaging companies whose job was to produce vaccines, meaning that's the area of expertise.
And government funding that.
Bas, this doesn't happen. But it happened. So now you tell me, with that sort of collaboration, how far do you think they're going to push this agenda of COVID and the prevention, and it'll be pushed? So the COVID situation is not one for panicking. No, not really.
Okay. So as we talk about not panicking, if you're eating bread this morning, there's a story in The Nation that says bakers are pinching slices from your full loaf of bread. Have you noticed something weighty about your loaf of bread lately? A few years ago, it was quite a fate to devour a whole loaf in one sitting. But today, even those not blessed with the best of appetites find themselves several slices, not too much of a task. It's not just change of appetite. So according to this story, there are some bakers who are supposed to be producing, 500 grams of bread, and they're selling a couple of grams short. Who is in charge of this? So there is a Kenya Bureau of Standards and the Weights and Measures. So when they say that this bread, and it must be labeled, this bread is X number of grams heavy, it should be that X number of grams heavy. But a certain survey has been conducted and found that an independent test conducted by The Nation this week on various consumer products, including packed sugar, wheat and maize flour, rice, tea leaves, spaghetti and salt, revealed that bread is a single commodity that has most offenders, with many brands failing the weight and measures test. They bought samples of the household goods from various outlets in Nairobi and neighboring Kajiado counties, among them supermarkets, estate shops, and they put them on the digital weighing scale. So what they found is that for bread, they sampled several Broadway, City Loaf, Super Loaf, Butter Toast, Festive Bread, BB Bread, Ken Blessed, Destiny. Some of the results of the test were shocking. Apart from Kifaru, the investigation revealed that most packers of sugar, tea leaves, spaghetti, salt, wheat and maize meal sampled passed the test. The biggest offenders, these bread guys, why are they going around this story? Surely, you've already told us this.
Skip that bit which is repetitive.
Some bakers taking away as high as 135 grams from what should be 600 to 800 grams of a loaf.
This really is a new turn. The story goes that mandazis that people bought in certain markets cost a certain amount of money. And for the longest time, those who made these mandazis decided not to tax their customers, and they maintained the price. The only thing that changed was the size of the mandazi.
Or the amount of nyama in the mandazi.
Yes,
Nyama
exactly.
is the amount of... So it's very hollow.
Actually, let's put it this way. It's bouncy.
But how often do you go and buy a loaf of bread and say, this feels like 380 grams?
You see, that's the thing.
You don't do it, exactly.
That's thing.
why they're getting away with it.
Actually-
Because you don't go pick up a loaf of bread and say,
You
this
don't
feels
read- you don't
slightly
even read-
weightier than it did
Do
yesterday.
you know how heavy should a loaf of bread
You
be?
don't even know when you feel it in your hand, do you?
You could, and I'm going to explain why. Yeah? If you buy wholemeal bread and you buy it from several bakers, wholemeal bread is actually heavier. Even that slice of wholemeal is heavier than your average wafy bread than that people buy and consume.
Okay.
Now, there are people who claim that they sell wholemeal. That thing is not wholemeal. In my opinion, it is colored. It's just colored. They put coloring so that it looks brown.
Looks brown,
And then
but
there's
it's nothing.
then there's some specks of some grain so that it looks like some wheat sort of like passed by that bread on its way to wherever it was going.
Wheat dust.
But
We'll see how this story unfolds, though. But so the nation claims that they have done this and they presented it to KEBS and the relevant authorities. The Department of Weights and Measures in the Ministry of Industrialization, Trade and Enterprise says after devolution, powers was stripped and handed to counties. And the counties are now mandated to enforce the weights and measures. Bas.
counties are mandated to. Okay,
Bas.
fine.
Share your story.
It's like on your marks, get set, go. Here we go.
Oh, yes. It's 6:45. Tengisa kidole, tengisa kidole, agano kidole, agano kidole, agano.
Thank you.
The political class, the contestants, everybody is trying to outsteal the other.
Remorse is not taught in any school. Manners is something you get from your mother. You don't get it from your political party.
Why are we so unfocused as a country? Why are we spending money and resources, yet we have real challenges in this country?
This coronavirus pandemic should teach us one thing, that universal healthcare is critical. Because at this point, whether you have a medical card that covers you, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM.
Business.
Right. You know, this newspaper has the news that it provides has to do with money, and most of it is dismal, dreary, and sometimes often depressing.
You don't have a money conversation in January.
There's always a money composition. Okay, Treasury eyes 152 billion from Project Shake Up. Okay. Economic strains force government to cut back on wasteful public expenditure. How often have we heard this? But let me just read anyway. Let me not be a wet blanket this early cold morning. The Treasury is targeting 152.35 billion in cash savings from cancellations of about a third stalled public projects. Now, if you want to understand contradiction, let me repeat it again so that you can listen to this.
Okay.
The Treasury is targeting 152.35 billion in cash savings from cancellations of about a third of stalled public projects. It has stalled. So it isn't moving forward. That's what stall means. So what are you cancelling?
As in, it's already cancelled. It's
Okay.
What is it? What's
Sisi,
your beef?
what's wrong? Sisi, what's wrong?
I think All right. Right. Stall
Say you're going to Mombasa. Okay? Your vehicle stalls. It doesn't mean that you've stopped going to Mombasa. You can now then decide, now, because ni radiator imekufa, wacha tumalize hii safari turudi Nairobi. Or you can decide.
Or shokamzoba.
Or shokomsoba.
Yes.
You can decide.
It's a part of the car.
Oh, God.
Which helps it move forward. Eric, you see, the reason why government projects stall in most cases is because of money. And not money has been taken away. Sometimes it is, but it hasn't been provided for.
Yep.
All right?
Yep.
Now, these projects cut across very many sectors. Infrastructure, okay? Estimated cost in billions of shillings, 809.57. Number of projects, 25, okay? According to the
Those are
World,
the stalled projects.
Let me read it.
Close to $1 trillion.
Yes, stalled projects per sector. According to the World Bank, 522 projects worth 1.1 trillion are dormant. Let me just read it for you so that you can continue understanding. Agriculture, this is in the billions, 56.702, there are 31 projects. Social protection, 49.858. Everything is in billions. There are 26 projects. Security, 37, now this one is serious, 37.9933 billion. And these are 99. Water, 26.73. The projects are 216. Education, 11.29 billion. Number of projects, 33. Treasury, 11.174 billion. Projects, 3. Now, of all the projects that have stalled, Treasury has the least number of projects that have stalled. When you start projects, usually it means there's funding for it. That's what it means.
It's been planned. There's plan. There's budget for it. That's been allocated.
Budget, thank you. Money. It means money put aside.
And means you start the project.
Yes. And you don't start it usually before all these things are certain. Okay? So the question you would ask is, why does it stall? Okay? And if it stalls, can it be jump-started? Now, indeed, there is a saving in that if you don't complete it, then you don't spend the money you had spent.
Yeah.
But the reason why the projects were put in place in the first place...
Those need.
Yes. So why are you presenting this thing as though we're receiving some help? We are not receiving some help.
There was a need for this project,
Yes.
and it was going to address something in the society and the development of the country. So what happens to that?
Yes. And look at the sectors that I mentioned: agriculture, infrastructure, social protection, security, water, education. It's the treasurer and I don't get. What do they need 11 billion for? What is it that they do? I thought their job was to ensure that we spend the money that we get. There's a department that belongs to them that collects this money.
That department is under them. So maybe it also includes that. Expanding the capacity of KRA, blah, 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 blah. Maybe.
So
either way, when it's okay. A question would be, so was there due diligence done in, first of all, deciding which projects to start? Could that project have been pushed and said, okay, so yes, there is this need for this project, but this project can wait another 5 years before we commence? Did all the projects have to commence when they did? So by the time you're getting to a point where you have too many projects ongoing and you don't have enough resources to continue financing them, you have a case where you have very many projects that have started, but then there's others are halting not because of money, others are halting because of other things. Oh, there's a land dispute in the middle of a project. You had not sorted that one out initially. Oh, like the one for the tannery, the tannery in Syokimau, that is one of the big 4 projects. Supposed to have started, then they realized this area is swampy.
they didn't know it was swampy when they started. Or
before you start a project, see, there's an environmental impact assessment.
There is. Even if you started during the dry season, you know very well it's a swampy. The vegetation will tell you it is swampy. But you see, of significance is this. If you look at the reason, it is reported that the Treasury Secretary said this is a comprehensive nationwide audit of projects have been completed, paving the way for a shake-up of cash-gobbling ventures in the wake of COVID-19. This is nonsense. There's nothing like... Look, the big animal in the room is a situation where projects are begun simply because they're capital intensive and they know very well it requires a lot of money.
Yep.
Now, the money may have been adequate for the task, but it wasn't adequate for the pilfering that takes place in these projects. So if money is given, the project will get to a certain point. The contractor can't move forward until more money is paid. And even when that is paid, a lot of it goes out to the people who supposedly enabled him to get the job. So these projects will not see the light of day, in that they won't be completed. So saving money, we've already lost money.
Yeah, we've lost money.
So how does saving come into this picture? That really is my point.
You're saving what you haven't spent.
How are you saving it? The loss
And
is
you didn't have it anyway.
No, the loss is what we should talk about, because if you have stalled projects, that's a net loss.
I wanted to live in this 100,000 shilling house with my income of 50,000 shillings.
Yes.
Now I've decided I'm not going to live there. I'm going to live in this house of 30,000 shillings. I have saved 70,000.
How? You didn't have the 70,000.
You didn't have it to begin with. It's nowhere.
In Kenya, my friend. Let's face Mount Kenya with that.
Really?
On that note, so we saw this story that was coming out of Githurai yesterday, Githurai 45. Raila Odinga was going to popularize BBI, and then this youth came out. Some welcomed him, they spoke to him, and then others came out screaming. And now it has become a whole issue of, is this region ready to hear the BBI? They were coming out screaming, Ruto, 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 Ruto. Does it mean that it's Ruto who holds sway in this? I was looking at that story and I was thinking, to create a narrative is very easy in this day and age. There's nothing that I saw yesterday that convinces me that, there's that kind of opposition to Raila Odinga, first of all, going to Githurai, or to the BBI itself, or such overwhelming support for William Ruto, just because of this one meeting. But now that's what it has come down to. BBI showdown is a headline in the nation, facing Mount Kenya, and the president is now summoning. Yesterday he met with the governors, yesterday and the day before. He's meeting with others today. Then he's going to be traveling to this region over the weekend. The president is expected to rally leaders from the region to support BBI. He has been told what he's been told by Senator Irungu Kangata and others, including Woman Rep Kate Waruguru from Laikipia, and they're saying this. So, but what?
Eric, there's a big animal in the room here with the issue of Uhuru and Central Kenya. It has nothing to do with the BBI, in my opinion.
No. It was rearing its head long before BBI talked.
Yes. BBI, unfortunately, has just come in and introduced a new perspective to an existing problem. There are many people who feel that there are very many broken promises. And why they feel this is, you need to look at the region and what it is they consider to be the staple crops that they have to sustain them. Tea, for instance. Talk to a tea farmer and they'll tell you, prices dropped. The cost of just keeping a worker, by the time I'm through with it, I make no money. This thing's not making sense to me. Then there are those who supplied the national government and their vendors. They have not been paid. Then there are those who worked for the county government. They have not been paid. There is a whole list of complaints that have existed.
There are ordinary traders,
yes,
who wake up and have businesses left, right, and center, and they sort of feel like the opportunities have dwindled and the taxation has gone up.
Yes,
perception maybe, but it's there.
Oh, that perception is their reality.
Yeah,
see?
That's the reality.
And they blame the president.
Dairy farming and all. So I think the president needs to. Maybe then, as you say that, CT, you see the tone that he was taking the other day, even saying, some of these people are in office because of my name. That's one of the things that when I call a foot and mouth moment, it's another one that I felt from the president. He spoke like that during the burial of Musalia's mom. Some of these people who are making so much noise, I occupy those positions because of my name.
Yeah, but that's how politics works. I mean, that's how it works.
You are elected,
yes,
because of my name.
Yes, but it's because they also supported you in one or the other. You don't just wake up in the morning and then you have this dream that you should give so and so a job.
No, your decisions are influenced.
They've been useful to you. That is why you put them there. And they may have very valid reasons why they no longer want to support you.
Yep.
I mean, it isn't a permanent and punishable position that when someone gives you a political posting that you must support them until you die. No.
More conversations coming up in the next hour. This is Kenya's biggest conversation, the Situation Room. It's now 7 o'clock.
Spice up your life. Spice FM, Nakuru.
All right, let's take a look from Waiaki to Kangemi. Actually, from Kangemi towards Westlands, jam is building up there, bumper to bumper almost in some cases. We're also looking at Mombasa Road. There's a lot going on in and outbound this morning, and we see because of the construction on the expressway, it's actually slower than you'd like it to be, that's for sure. All right, so it's piled up all the way from the Way Bridge at Mlolongo. It's piled up through to General Motors. It slows down again right around Bellevue and then opens up a little bit, but then all the way to Nyeri Stadium, we have bumper to bumper action. Also on Thika Road, getting into the CBD, it's slow as well. If you're going towards Westlands and you're on Uhuru Highway, you're going to slow down right around Chiromo, all that through to what was the Westlands roundabout at some point. So Westlands, clogged up. Coming out of Thika Road, same thing. Also on Mombasa Road. Langata Road is going to give you a little bit of reprieve. You can get onto Bagathi Way and into the city through there. It's not too bad. It's moving, though it's slow. It's moving. This is traffic hour after all. Let's take a look and see what happens in about an hour or so. But for now, this is what you're faced with. Jogo Road also going towards Landis Road is slow into the CBD. Spice of MKE, get in touch with us if you find an alternate route or where somebody else would get it better. All right? Text us as well. 40127.
This is the Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latin, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
It's 2 minutes after 7. Thank you very much for tuning in to the Situation Room this morning. This is the second hour of the show. We have the show airing from 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. every weekday morning on Spice FM. If you're in Nairobi, it's 94.4. Mombasa is 87.9. 102.5 in Kisumu. Nakuru 96.0. Eldoret 96.7. And 90.9 in Nyeri. Well, in Malindi, it's 97.7. We also live stream the show because it's audio-visual. We are live on Facebook, Spice FM KE. We also live stream it on Twitter, on Spice FM KE, on YouTube, and on our website, www.spicefm.co.ke. Every weekday morning, 7 a.m. to 9 o'clock, we are also live on KTN Home. And so, very good morning to you who is joining us on KTN Home. We begin every hour with the day's proverb. Today's proverb, City.
Good men must die, but death cannot kill their names. I am informed that I have in the past mentioned this same proverb, and we're still debating on whether it was this same proverb or whether it was a proverb that is similar to this one.
With a similar meaning.
Yes, I am going to look at my archives and come up with a concrete and definitive response to that.
An audit report.
and I will inform you that we have made a saving.
On the number of words in the proverb.
Yes.
Okay. Where is this proverb from?
It's a traditional African proverb. It's something that very many African communities have. There are proverbs that are very, very similar to this one here.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
Some say a good name is as good as a meal. Others say a good name is something to live by. And the things that are, the positive things that are said about a good name keep flowing and flowing on and on and on.
A good person will never be forgotten. that your name may never be forgotten.
Yes.
Is that in the Game of Thrones?
I
That
haven't
your name
watched
may
Game
never
of Thrones.
die.
That your name may never die.
Remember, Eric,
Something like that.
one of the things that traditionally, one of the reasons why the issue of marriage and children was considered to be absolutely important was so that your name doesn't die.
Okay.
There are those who say so that your lineage doesn't disappear, but the lineage had to do with the name. And that is why, even when you're not called so-and-so, the son of so-and-so, but you're usually, the naming system ensured that your name was carried on. Others, the first child, male child, was always named after the grandfather, the paternal grandfather. A second one was named after the maternal grandfather. Others, you simply just inherited your father's name and you are so-and-so, meaning your first name and then the second name would be your father's name. Others had a concoction of both, but others were named after people who were close to the family or relatives. But the truth is, it was name carrying, meaning that person would never be forgotten. So when you're asked, but this name, you could explain, like this name, this was my father's uncle's name. And he and my father were close and I was born around the same time. So the name continued.
Yeah.
So it wasn't as though they invented a name for you. No.
No.
You simply
You
carried
inherit.
on. Yes. Or in cases where they wanted to remember certain things, if you're born in the morning, you had a name. If you're born with the umbilical cord around your neck, you had a certain name. If you were born during the rainy season, that your name would also indicate it. All communities had ways of naming that enabled them to understand not just the environment that they lived in, but also to explain the social fabric in which they all existed.
Okay. I think I've seen the quote in Game of Thrones. What is dead may never die. Right, John? Okay. Saying it. So let's talk about COVID vaccine
Let's do that.
and fighting COVID from the regional perspective.
Right, fighting from a regional perspective, and that's what we're looking at. The world is talking about the vaccines. The world is talking about vaccine production and who is trying to mop up vaccines, who is paying top dollar for it, who is booking spaces for it, and everybody seems to be in this clamor to get what they need for their respective populations and saying, look, we need 100 million, we need 50 million here and there. How are we going to get it? And what are we going to have to pay for it? How are we going to make sure that the burden is not on our citizens, especially for countries in the south of the globe, right? Some other countries are giving it for free. China, for example, making sure that they have it and are actually being very quiet about it in terms of how they're vaccinating their populations. Enter Tanzania and President John.
Are they
Pombe.
being very quiet about it? The Chinese?
Well, I mean, they're vaccinating their people in
Let
terms
me-
of they're being
Let's just say
quiet
it's
about.
not
They're
being
being
reported by the West.
They're being quiet about
Thank
it.
you,
in-
Eric.
Sure. They're being quiet about it in terms of
They
they're
appear.
going ahead and doing it without making noise. Oh, we need a certain number of vaccines. Who's going to help us? Are we next in line? And they're doing this for their people for free. That's what I mean by they're being quiet about it.
But ask this
They're
question.
just going ahead and doing the due
The
diligence
information that
and
gets,
getting the job
the
done.
information that gets to us and the one we consume, where does it emanate from? China? The answer is no.
No. When it comes from China, it's something like what is now being reported about the new anal swabs.
Yes.
For it has got to have something that is,
No, let's just be
Anyway,
clear.
come
When I
back.
say that they're being quiet about it, what I'm saying is that
they're not making
they
a
are
big
not
fuss
making a
of-
big fuss about where and how they're getting their vaccines. They're not making they're going ahead and vaccinating their people. They're going ahead and doing what they need to do to get this done. Enter Tanzania. With all of this fuss that has been made over the last 2 weeks and everybody's talking about who's booking what and where and how much it's going to cost, John Pombe Magufuli says, you know what? He's talked directly to his Ministry of Health officials who would be going into this saying, we also need to join in this and get. He said, be very careful about vaccines that are coming out of the West as an answer to this COVID problem. He said, if it was so possible for them to get a vaccine for a disease that showed up just a year ago, why is it that we do not have something that could treat cancer? Why is it that we do not have something that would treat HIV? Why is it that we do not have something that would treat all these other ailments, which we have a bigger problem with right now than even this COVID? And he says, I want you to be extremely careful in how you go about procuring this. And if I'm going to go through that quote directly, he said, you, and he was talking to his Ministry of Health, should stand firm. Vaccinations are dangerous. This is what he's telling the people essentially of Tanzania. If the white man was able to come up with vaccinations, he should have found vaccinations for AIDS by now. He would have found a vaccination for tuberculosis by now. He would have found a vaccination for malaria by now. He would have found a vaccination for cancer by now. Let's not think that they love us very much. This country is rich. Africa is rich, and everyone is jealous of our vast wealth. We must be very careful. So,
has he been quoted accurately?
This is what he said yesterday, and he's been quoted across with this very same quote. And he said very many things in this. One, he's talking about the vaccination. Secondly, he's talking about the fact that if you look beneath, he's talking about the fact that we could get something that could essentially nuke us. And we have a lot of potential here on the continent that people are still not comfortable with. And they see a situation again where they could reap from the vast resources that we have when you're essentially putting its people down.
You know, he's given a whole array of conditions, some which don't need vaccines. There is a cure for malaria, not a treatment, cure, as in you get well, story finished. Not preventative, there's a preventative aspect of it, okay? But, you know, there may be questions asked as questions are asked about everything, and that is why you don't have any treatment that is 100% proof. No. They always tell you, this is what it can do, but this is also the harm it can cause you. Or the contraindication. This is something that is always talked about. But to present it as though anything that has to do with vaccines is absolutely dangerous and it will cause you harm. Long before he came into power, even when he himself was probably a young person, he had been vaccinated. We've been receiving vaccinations for the longest time. Longest. Suddenly they are dangerous. If they are not tested and there isn't much information about it, yes, they could be dangerous. And that's why all this care is taken in ensuring that by the time it's released to the public, certain safety measures have been guaranteed. It's not as though these things are released to the general public, should I say unsuspecting public, when everything about it is fraught with danger. That is not the truth.
You're presenting this argument essentially to a gentleman who told his population not to speak of COVID at some point and said that, look, we held several prayers across the country as Tanzania and then we were COVID free. And then it became something almost crime-worthy to speak of COVID in Tanzania thereafter. So now suddenly there's a vaccination for this thing which he's told the people don't exist. Do you really think that he was going to accept it with open arms and then not warn his people otherwise? Of course not. I mean, here we are, and the first thing is that he said, look, even this thing, they say it's going to come and ravage our country. We have refused it by prayer. Then you want to come and tell him that we can actually heal people and treat people, and then we're saying that you should come and be vaccinated and injected against this same thing? Absolutely not. How else did you expect him to respond to something like this? And unfortunately, he's telling the country that this thing is dangerous. Don't you think they're going to listen to him?
This isn't the first time we've had a powerful leader who is listened to by that nation of Tanzania telling his people something that amounts to snake oil discussion.
But just on this COVID as well.
No,
even on this COVID, before COVID, yes. But even on this COVID, telling them that it doesn't exist altogether.
Yes, it's the same conversation that has been carried on now to vaccine. There was a gentleman called Kinji Kitile Ngwale. You may not have heard of him. But this was the leader of the Majimaji rebellion.
She was a woman, actually. Kinji Kitile.
No, he. No, the person you're talking about. No.
That was the Majimaji rebellion. Okay, let's go on.
That's Majimaji. I know the person you're talking about. That was a female leader in Kenya. We'll come to talk about her, who rebelled against the British. Mr. Ngwale was Tanzanian, okay? And he led the Majimaji rebellion. And you know what he did? Told his people, there's like a concoction he had, okay? And he said that he was possessed by a certain spirit named Hongo, who was a snake, and had come and given him this information that if he sprinkled these people with a concoction over their heads, they would be spared and they would be bulletproof. I'm paraphrasing here. People died.
As they probably surely would.
People died because they listened to him. So here we have a situation where someone is saying, I am telling you these things are dangerous. I am telling you COVID doesn't exist. I'm telling you COVID does exist.
I think when you look at how Magufuli has handled the COVID issue in Tanzania, without listening to what he's saying, you could have some conversation. But then when you listen to what he says, you then start questioning exactly where he's headed. And especially on this particular one, because he's coming out as strongly as the biggest anti-vaxxer you could ever think of. He's coming out to say, look, there are even examples of several countries here that started vaccinating their young 14-year-old girls on the issue of cervical cancer. It turns out that that thing was not a vaccination for cervical cancer. Their girls now became barren. It was a ploy. And he says this publicly, and he is the president. There's a message that he's basically sending. So are we saying that Tanzania now is no longer even going to offer the immunization for young children when they're born, because that's immunization and vaccination? Is he following the same? Is he going to do the same thing and say, okay, now all the children who are born, there's nothing like government doing at any vaccination campaign, immunization campaign for young kids?
Remember
I think it's a very dangerous stance to take, unfortunately. It's a dangerous stance to take, because people will then take it as gospel truth across board, not just for COVID. Like you're saying, children being born and then the vaccines that could essentially protect them from life-threatening diseases, you will find that people will start to drop them. And I think we cannot forget the importance with which people take such statements. You'll be surprised at how people may have changed their mind with this one paragraph of a quote that he made a day ago. It is dangerous to have that kind of thinking wafting in the minds of people who would change their mind at a second, and that's what's going to happen, unfortunately. With some of these things.
The thing is, being the president and head of state, he is the one who's guiding the policy of the country. He's basically saying, he could have said something else. He could have said, all right, Ministry of Health, be very careful, study hard.
Yes.
Exactly which kind of vaccine you're looking at, look at its efficacy, have our own scientists here, look at it again before we roll it out to the people. That, you can say, all right, we are just installing another measure of safety. But saying, no, these things, if these people wanted to bring a vaccine, they could have cured cancer by now. And giving an example and saying, this cervical cancer vaccine has not worked, has made young girls in certain countries.
And look at what he started with. You should stand firm. Vaccinations are dangerous. And he's talking to the Ministry of Health officials, essentially talking to the rest of the country. You should stand firm. So you should stand firm in saying what? Stand firm in saying no to this.
When you say it's
dangerous, you're not going
to
be in a rush.
But when you say it's dangerous, have you
things.
not already told them what to stand firm against?
Yes, you've basically said don't buy into this, and don't buy this.
We're not going to vaccinate.
We're not going to vaccinate. We're not going to procure this vaccine that the rest of the world is
But
rushing
remember
to buy.
also, where there's a shutdown in Tanzania is on information. You cannot tell with any accuracy what the COVID situation is in Tanzania. Why? As I said, because there's a shutdown. That information simply does not come out. Now, denying that something exists, no matter how vigorously, that doesn't guarantee its extinction, or it just guarantees that you are speaking against it. That's all it does. Yes. See, the reality of something isn't determined by how loud you talk about it. No, it isn't.
It's a rather worrying trend, this one coming from a president of a country. And the effect of this is that you're basically saying, initially you were saying, all right, let's also go with what we've been doing traditionally as a country, okay? Let's go with as the Mzungu is trying to come up with medicine, let's also try and come up with our own healing method. That you can argue about and say, okay, so he was telling his people, what is it that we can do to boost our immunity? Those things that we're doing are those things that even Mohammed keeps reminding us of. Boost your immunity. Look at what you're eating, how you're living, all right? And then now he comes and says, do not even contemplate immunization.
Well, look at some of the things that he said, which is, I think, is also interesting to see the kind of trajectory that this conversation takes. He said, we have lived for over 1 year without the virus because our God is able, and Satan will always fail. The health ministry should be cautious and avoid the temptation to turn us into a country where vaccination trials are conducted freely. So he's still on this thing, that it is God who has protected Tanzania from COVID-19, 1. 2, COVID-19 essentially in Tanzania doesn't exist. So then I have to ask myself, if truly it doesn't exist in Tanzania with this moratorium on information like you've talked about, then why be so concerned about a vaccine coming to the country in the first place? Why should the Ministry of Health officials even be concerned about talking about the vaccination? So if there's no COVID in Tanzania, why are they even having this conversation? So then you want to also look at the falsehoods that are being presented. Then there probably is COVID in Tanzania, and probably at numbers that they would not be able to control. However, the answer is not in any kind of medicine or science, according to Magufuli. The answer is in prayer. And that Satan is the one who is bringing about these false messages from the vaxxers and everybody else and who's involved in the science. So he really is still on this, that it's God who helped Tanzania to get rid of COVID for the last 1 year, and it is God who will continue to protect the nation. So you can imagine, this is the message that has been spread across, and that is what will continue to hold sway.
Well, I'm not arguing about God not playing a part. I can't argue about that. But the Catholic Church, the Tanzanian Episcopal Conference president, says, our country is not an island. This is according to John Mwasikwabila. He says, we have no choice but to follow the rest. We must arm ourselves, take precaution, and ask God for strength to fight the scourge. He was asking the public to wash their hands, maintain social distancing, follow safety, and all those measures that everybody else in the world is doing. So basically, head of a church here has come out to say, no, we must do something else. Okay? We must continue doing what we have been advised internationally by experts.
You know, we don't.
We are not an island. We can't say that we are doing something different from what the others are doing.
We don't know what's happening in Tanzania, so one cannot speak about it in detail. But by the time a church leader comes out to say we are not different, what do you think he has seen or experienced that makes him come out and say such a thing? He knows very well that the government can say all it likes about there not being COVID, but he sees it. He leads congregation. He leads people. He sees the problems they have.
Yeah.
He understands them.
Yeah.
And while we're at it, since we are demonizing COVID and saying it doesn't exist, why don't we just shut down all the hospitals and stop this nonsense of borrowing these Western curative methods for all? And why don't we just go back to basic African traditional medicine? And yes.
Shut down all hospitals.
Shut it down. Don't bother.
Whatever, malaria,
Nini operation. Forget about these
everything.
things. Cancer, white man's invention. It doesn't. I mean, look, to deny the existence of COVID is to deny every disease that is known to man. So it's like saying the entire world is in a conspiracy to claim that there's a disease called COVID, and yet in reality it doesn't exist. That's what this discussion seems to amount to.
That's where it's headed.
Yes. So everyone else on the planet is saying there is COVID. But there's this one country.
Should regional leaders have a word with this man?
I think we should.
Look at the regional leaders. Look at Mzee Kaguta Museveni and what he has done about COVID.
Look at
Kagame and what he has done about COVID. Look at Uhuru and what he has about COVID.
Yes.
Right?
If you leave the nonsense of the scams aside, the efforts of the government has been the steps. They are commendable.
At the very least, the realization and acknowledgement.
So the East African community leaders should really, not now, stop going around and treating this guy with kid gloves. Just sit him down and tell him, look, man, okay, all right, there's COVID.
You're the chink in our armor here.
There is COVID. And we need to have something. We need to have a conversation. You need to actually follow some protocols. Already, there is talk that travelers from Tanzania are being blocked in some parts of the world. Tanzania, there's likelihood of that strain from South Africa having gotten into Tanzania. So any traveler coming from Tanzania. Next will be Tanzania and Kenya are closed.
Yes.
Eric, do you remember what happened to the UK when that variant was first cited? European countries shut down their borders overnight, as in shut. Sorry, you're not coming in.
Nothing from the UK.
Now, you're spot on when you talk about us being the neighbors. If they have a problem, we will have a problem. And by the way, that problem isn't long in coming. No, it isn't.
It isn't.
I think it's
we closed the border with Tanzania for some time. Then we reopened that border with Tanzania. It's about time now the government has a conversation again with not now at Tanzania, what we're doing. No. This guy should call Magufuli. Go visit him in Geita, his home. Choma mbuzi mzee tunakuja. And sit him down and speak man to man. Look, you guy, you need to do something. Do something, because this is now bordering on their complete absurd. It's nonsense.
But the question that comes to my mind, what is it that makes a leader take such a direction? You've won an election.
Yep.
You are the president. What is it? You have a country that is so full of minerals, it is amazing. The mineral deposits in Tanzania are mind-boggling. It's a question of how best to manage them. You have progress that you've put into play to ensure that these minerals are well harvested. Look, if you want to benefit Tanzania, then you have to take a position where the interests of Tanzanians come first. It is commendable, it is laudable. However, on health matters, when you take a complete turn and deny the existence of a disease that exists, you deny the methods that have been proven to work in trying to allay this particular condition. You deny it.
Indeed. Let's take a break. 26 minutes after 7. This is Kenya's biggest conversation. It's the Situation Room, broadcasting on Spice FM, on KTN Home, and online, Spice FM KE, on YouTube, on Facebook, on Twitter. Good morning.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day. Spice up your 24/7, around the world, non-stop. This is Spice FM.
Living with HIV is not a death sentence. Thanks to advances in medicine, HIV is now a manageable illness, with patients able to lead normal lives and raise families as they achieve their goals and their dreams. Tune in to the Spice Drive with me, Monique, from 3 p.m. to 7 p.m. every weekday as we talk about HIV, why it's important to know your status, ways to protect yourself, how you can get tested, and how testing positive should not stop you from living a normal life. Courtesy of the National AIDS Control Council, NACC.
Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise. Yeah!
You're listening to Spice
We're looking
FM.
at 15 degrees, sunny conditions in Nairobi at 28. That'll be the high today. Come back down to lows of 15. It's 10 degrees and sunny in Nyeri, highs of 25 and lows of 12. 13 degrees will be the low in Nakuru, sunny conditions at 10 at the moment. It's sunny in Eldoret at 13, highs of 26. 30 will be the high in Kisumu. It's sunny at 17. Sunny at 17 in Kakamega also. 31 the high and lows of 14. It's partly sunny in Mombasa at 25, highs of 33. Highs of 31 in Malindi. Mostly cloudy at the moment at 26. It's mostly sunny at 20 in Kampala and sunny in Dar es Salaam at 26, going to highs of 32. Rain showers in Johannesburg this morning still continue for most parts of the day is what it looks like. 23 will be the high and lows of 16. It's now become a foggy morning in Lagos. 27 at the moment, highs of 33 and lows of 24. And for now, Kinshasa is clear at 23, going to highs of 30, back down to lows of 23. Okay, so we're looking at heavy traffic on Mombasa Road today, trying to get into the CBD. Kind of slow. The roads were all clear until then everything just got clogged up. Kiambu Road, quite clogged today as you're trying to join Thika Superhighway with usual suspects all lined up for duty today. Coming off of Jogo Road into the city also seems to be a bit slow. Let's take a look and see how that changes as we go through the morning. But yeah, it's a normal traffic Thursday, building up in some parts as we expect it to. Look out for Uhuru Highway if headed in that direction. It's actually quite slow getting into the city. Also coming out of Westlands in the other direction, Uhuru Highway will be the one that slows you down a little bit today. Okay, the eastern and southern bypass is now clear. You can use that to get in and out of the city. Talk to us about what else might be clogged up, and so we can see how we can help. Spice FMKE on Twitter. Text on 40127.
Spice FM, Malindi. Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself.
Half past 7, this is Kenya's biggest conversation, the Situation Room. The conversation continues on Spice FM, KTN Home and online, this and every weekday morning, 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. In the room, we have Eric Latif, Ndu Oko, and C.T. Muga. So that whole conversation about TZ, let's see what happens, how this unfolds. There's an opinion piece written by a lawyer called Sunday Member who says, let's cure vaccine hesitancy. Okay, as we talk about all these issues, already comments coming in saying, there's no need to bash Magufuli, all right? He is speaking about something. He's not out of turn. So there's a whole tendency to reject vaccines influenced by factors such as lack of trust in a vaccine or its provider or some several levels of complacency. Vaccine hesitant people may reject just certain vaccine, and others may just say we are completely anti-vaccination. So like we were saying yesterday, there is need even for the government to start that communication and conversation in the country.
Let me ask the question, Eric. This issue of bashing, at what point are you merely discussing the issue and pointing to the facts about it? And at what point are you bashing?
When you're doing that.
Okay.
When what you're doing is bashing, that's the point of bashing.
Because...
But you see, there's absolutely... Look, the president of a country stands up to say, if there was vaccine. Same thing when C.S. Mutahi Kagwe said some words about the vaccine the first time it came out, introducing a disease into your body and all those things. You reacted the same way. And you're like, boss, what are you saying? It's the same. It's the same thing that Magufuli is doing now. He's basically questioning this whole concept.
He actually is vaccination. He isn't questioning it. He's condemning it. You see, if I'm to go by what has been reported, that isn't questioning. You should question these things, and you should question the efficacy. You should question. It's something that is appropriate. But if you have a wholesale approach to it and you say it is dangerous, you've condemned it.
Mm-hmm. In no uncertain terms, you have condemned it. You've gone right out and said that we have a problem with this thing and we can't continue. We can't even think about it. And it didn't come out as just a suggestion. It essentially came out as a warning that, look, you have to stand firm. These things are dangerous. And then even went on and gave examples of what had been done previously with the cervical cancer vaccine and how then it essentially sterilized young women. So it's not a suggestion that maybe we shouldn't. Yes, and I do agree that everything should be checked. Everything should be carried out with trials. However, for something like this, you must be very careful about what you say.
The wording.
The wording. You must be very, very careful. Because people are going to take your opinion as gospel truth. You're the president of a country. You have a responsibility.
The pharmaceutical world is fraught with examples of drugs, of interventions that have gone belly up. Many. Drugs discontinued, products discontinued. It's not new. And rightfully, people should be cautious. We've had stories of certain products that have been discontinued in the West, and yet they keep selling them to unsuspecting third world countries.
Yep.
those are things you should be careful about. But a wholesale condemnation, caution, yes. Condemnation, definitely no. Not in this case. There's a place for condemnation, and there's a place for caution.
Indeed. So let's switch conversations now and have a conversation about COVID-19 in the country and the support that we're getting from our partners and friends from across the globe. The UNDP and the government of Japan, like we were talking about earlier, recently came to the Ministry of Health and they donated this new robot. And the robots are supposed to help in the fight against COVID-19, to be placed at KNH, at the airport and at Bagathi Hospital. They can help in disinfecting some areas. They can also help in checking temperature. They can help in reminding people, passing communication about COVID-19 and what people need to do about COVID-19. And apart from that, the UNDP has also been working on programs to help Kenya get out of this situation that is COVID. All right. So the post-COVID recovery strategy. When we spoke to the governor of Kisumu County, Professor Anyang' Nyong'o, just after they had launched as a Council of Governors the recovery strategy for the counties, and we were going into step by step what is it that the counties have done. They also received support, and he told us that at the point they received support from development partners such as the UNDP as well. So let's have a conversation on what else the UNDP is doing and such other organizations. Joining us on the line now is the UNDP resident representative for Kenya, Walid Badawi. He's on the line. Good morning, sir.
Good morning. Thank you so much, Eric, for having me on your show.
Welcome to the Situation Room, Walid.
Thank you. It is quite a situation.
Indeed. Let's start with the situation with these robots. Just explain when people hear, okay, so robots are going to come and help fight COVID. What exactly is this? So just clear the air and enlighten us about the robots that you donated to the Ministry of Health.
All right. Well, let me introduce you to Jasiri, Shuja, and Tumaini, the three robots that, with the generous support of the government of Japan, and in very strong partnership with the Ministry of Health, UNDP was able to deploy these three anti-epidemic robots. And these robots actually are not the first to be deployed here in Africa. We're actually, as UNDP, provided similar support to Rwanda and to Equatorial Guinea, but also in India. And basically what these robots do is they provide opportunities for the health system to protect its frontline workers, first and foremost, because these robots are able to do things that may and do risk our heroes, our frontline workers, the health workers, by doing rapid temperature testing, they can scan up to 200 people in 1 minute. It's far more efficient and effective. They can disinfect large areas. They can detect the adherence to government COVID-19 protocols, such as wearing masks and social distancing. But these robots, so they provide that first-hand level of service. But actually, I think they also provide us with an opportunity to explore a whole new realm of potential job creation and knowledge, deepening our insight on the impact of technology and robotics in the field of health. And so for us as UNDP, it's an investment to not just deliver immediate health services, but actually to look at how can we see what these robots can do in the future? What kind of industry can grow around it to actually deliver services through robotics in other sectors? So it's an experiment that I think will give us quite a bit of insight to leapfrog development. But Eric, this is also one of the things that is not the only thing that UNDP is doing in terms of actually spurring the innovation ecosystem in Kenya to see how innovation can be a currency for recovery and development now in the post-COVID-19 era. And I'm happy to discuss many of these other innovative ventures here in Silicon Savannah.
So can we ask you, I mean, just looking, I mean, this is just about a week or so old in terms of the launch of these 3 robots and what they're able to do in Nairobi specifically now. How is it going so far? What have we seen in terms of what has been done?
I think these are still early days, as you said. It's 7 days. So since the launch last Friday with His Excellency Honorable Mutahi Kagwe and the team at the Ministry of Health, we are now deploying the robots in Jomo Kenyatta International Airport, as you had mentioned in the intro, but also Kenyatta National Hospital and Mbagati Hospital. So the deployment is happening now. The robots are being programmed to adapt to their new environment now in terms of how to function in those physical spaces. We can expect very soon then that, with the presence, for example, of the robot in the airport, that this will encourage a lot of tourism as well, because the backlogs and the lines for the screening and so forth will be significantly reduced. So I think it's going to have impacts on multiple levels, and I think as we look at the deployment, these are some of the things that we'll be assessing very carefully. Also, as a global institution, as I said, we've deployed these in other countries, and so there'll be quite a bit of experience exchange. We've actually, last year, November, deployed an exchange visit together with the Ministry of Health to our office in Rwanda to actually go and see what the Rwandan government has done with these robots and how they have plugged them into the wider national response. So I think these types of exchanges and the learning, which will be constant, not a one-off, will actually inform the constant evolution of how we deploy the robots and work with them.
Walid, do you see this as complementary to human resource, or is it a takeover from human resource? And we've seen questions that have been asked before that when you employ certain forms of technology, that then humans would lose their jobs. So is this complementary or is it a takeover?
No, it's absolutely complementary, and thanks for that question. And I think CS Kagwe addressed that point head on during his intervention at the launch, where he said very directly, this is not a replacement of human resource. This is actually a way to safeguard our very precious human resource, to actually put the robots more in harm's way, if one would put it that way, and actually create so many more opportunities for youth employment. Around the ecosystem of these robots, we've been working with local private companies to actually look at the maintenance and the constant update and programming of these robots for further uses beyond COVID-19. And this is, in my view, very directly creating new vistas of opportunity, of jobs, of learning and knowledge that are not replacing the fundamental human resource where we will always depend.
The argument has merit, and it is the argument that has been used for the longest time, even with regard to automation in other industries. But the direct result has been actually the replacement of human services with the equipment, for the simple reason that, one, you don't have industrial problems with machinery. They do what you program them to do, and they don't usually go on strike. No, they don't go on strike or maternity leave. Then, in industries where they have been used and have been hailed as useful, perhaps, say, for instance, in defense forces or even in agriculture. But even if I talk about agriculture, there's been a problem there. Tea is a very serious commodity in this country because it caters for a very large proportion of how we get our foreign exchange earnings. And every attempt that has been made to mechanize that particular industry, which is the same thing as what we're doing here, has always had the same argument that it will likely make the industry efficient. But if you look at it, the truth of the matter is that it would replace human labor.
Well, let me refer you to our 2015 Human Development Report as UNDP. And this actually looked at human development and the changing world of work. And that really discussed and addressed head-on this issue of automation and what it is, the impact it's having on the workforce, labor, displacement, and so forth. So I will agree definitely that there will be some functions that may become outdated and obsolete as a result of the introduction of robotics. But at the same time, and this is the corollary to that argument, is that this will also create other opportunities that may not be the same exact ones that were being displaced. But just look at the tech sector and look at the Fourth Industrial Revolution. It's called the Fourth Industrial Revolution for the very reason that it has revolutionized how we think and operate. And you cannot deny, and the figures prove, that this has created quite an industry globally and in Kenya as well. And this is where also, we're very pleased beyond just the robots to, as I said earlier, working with the Ministry of ICT, Innovation and Youth Affairs and many other stakeholders in the innovation ecosystem, trying to surface through our accelerator lab, which is here in Kenya, all sorts of new innovations, apps, technologies, solutions that may not all be about technology. They could be basic, mundane things, but are actually helping to change people's lives. Now, that's the type of intervention that we need to be incentivizing. Those are the types of initiatives that we need to be supporting financially and technically, and linking them to the market so that those innovators are actually able to see the fruits of those the innovations, whether it's an app that's helping connect plumbers and electricians to end users in a much more efficient and effective way. Now, the app is just the backbone. You still need the carpenter, you still need the electricians, you still need, all of those craftsmen in whichever fields to deliver those services. So technology is, in my view, very clearly not a replacement, but there will be a need to invest also in social protection programs. There will, as I said, be some that may be displaced, hopefully temporarily, until they're able to also retool themselves. Learning is a constant thing. It's not that you just go to school until you graduate and stop learning after that. This is what I think societies need to also become much more agile in constantly adjusting to the new normal. And that includes keeping up with the developments in the Fourth Industrial Revolution.
Do you think it needs more than just saying that it's important for such investments to take place? We must understand that a lot of these technologies will come into societies that have been historically traditional in the way in which things have been done, right? A society whereby the 8 to 5 people actually sitting behind a desk is what then is looked at and considered work. So do you think that the messaging around this, as we think about new technologies, new media, new things like this, the messaging must be much stronger than the actual operation?
No, both are important. It's not an and or. I think as we look to the whole innovation ecosystem, from the policy side to the investment side to the skilling side to the actual enabling environment to allow these innovations to actually be invested in directly, to the mindset and behavioral changes that need to go with it. It's not just an and or, it's actually all of these together. So the ecosystem approach to looking at how these innovations are going to change the way we do things is also quite key. And so that's why, as I said about these robots, this is a pilot. It is an experiment. It is a way that we will actually have very direct learning from the impact that this is having on that transformation of the health sector in this case through the introduction of these robots. So it's not just a replacement function. It's really actually a learning process, and we hope that will inform, and Minister Kagwe has been quite clear that he says he wants to be organizing a conference later in the year to look at the future of the health sector, and we're discussing as UNDP how to support that. So the learning that will come from this here in Kenya, but also beyond that, would be a way for us to begin to internalize the varying implications, what it means for education, what it means for mindset shifts, as I said, and what it means for the policy environment to incentivize and ensure constant investment in these types of innovations.
Walid, apart from this one, the robot and the donation that was given by you and the government of Japan, there are also other programs that UNDP is involved with in terms of looking at the socioeconomic impact of COVID-19, the economic recovery strategy that the government has come up with. Where do you plug into that recovery strategy, both at the national level and the county level?
Thanks for that. Yeah, absolutely. UNDP actually, maybe more broadly beyond our interventions in the innovation space, as part of a global mandate given to UNDP to technically lead the UN system at the country level to actually support the development of what we call socioeconomic response plans for the UN. This was introduced and launched in June last year, and since then UNDP, with the rest of the family of the UN agencies and their 23 UN funds and programs, agencies, funds and programs here, we've actually supported the country in developing the post-COVID economic recovery strategy under the leadership of the National Treasury and State Department of Planning, but also the county level socioeconomic re-engineering and recovery strategy, which was launched by His Excellency the President in December. So we provided both technical and financial support to both these processes, and our view here and what we are bringing into this process was to ensure that the global thinking and the global frameworks that the UN has come up with for responding to the socioeconomic impacts of COVID actually first and foremost address the most vulnerable. So defining those, assessing who they are in different countries, making sure that then the interventions that the country, the government, the different stakeholders, private sector as well, and the UN system actually are tailored to this. So we were very directly involved, thanks to also generous contributions from other development partners here, including Finland, Sweden, Italy, Norway, and others, to actually support the development of these frameworks. So we played a very key role. Now, how do we situate this? Innovation is a key part of those strategies. So again, the linkage to the innovation ecosystem as a driver to build forward better is already envisaged in those plans. But what is central here is that we also remain cognizant of the Sustainable Development Goals that have been set back because of COVID. We've seen for the first time since we've started measuring human development a major drop in 2020, and we need to bring that back on course. Just very, very quickly, perhaps, these socioeconomic response plans focus essentially, the UN's socioeconomic response plan focuses on 5 areas. Health first. So we need to continue investing in health care systems and providing immediate healthcare support, because COVID-19 is a health challenge in its first instance. But we also have to continue to protect people. And here, social protection, and how do we extend social protection schemes to the most affected, be they informal workers. We know Kenya is 84% informal. The informal economy constitutes about 84% of the labor market here. So how do we ensure that those informal workers are reached? And we have innovative initiatives with the National Hospital Insurance Fund, the International Labor Organization, to come up with ways to reach those particular communities as a way of implementing this.
When you say you have plans, do you measure your success by simply putting in place plans that work, or do you also look at the outcomes?
No, we look very much at the outcomes.
So can you tell us a bit about the successful outcomes of some of these initiatives that you have put in place?
Well, I mean, first of all, these plans definitely in themselves as a first instance become part of it. If we now look at then what happens post these plans, for us it will be how then do they factor into the country's planning processes, the county's planning processes, and from there, obviously, the linkage to budgets, because these plans will only be implemented when the national resources will be aligned to the priorities therein. So we will work through various other programs that we have to monitor closely those allocations. We know the fiscal constraints that are happening now. So part of how we will also measure ourselves is also to see how we're supporting the country to look at the whole spectrum of resources available to it, not just international development finance and official development assistance, but private investments. How do we start to measure the alignment of those resources to the implementation of the plans? We would look at stakeholders. Are these plans bringing the right stakeholders to the table? Do we have robust coordination mechanisms at national, subnational level that really are not just about government sitting in its corner and the private sector sitting in its corner, because these plans will only be implemented through SDG 17. So we will look at, for example, the robustness of those vehicles and platforms to bring those players together.
Thank you very much. Walid Badawi is the UNDP resident representative in Kenya. He's been talking to us about the UNDP's support for Kenya during this COVID-19 period and very many other projects that you're running with. We'll be speaking to you again soon, Walid, and we wish you a great day.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye.
This is a Situation Room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation. We'll be back shortly.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day. Spice up your life. 87.9 Spice FM. Mombasa. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM.
All right. So robots and others in place. I think when you look at what the development partners do and do in terms of supporting the government, so they work with the government directly, others through some implementing agencies. These are civil society organizations and all. Sometimes you actually get lost into what exactly are you guys doing? And it's important to sometimes just put them out there and ask them, so what is it that you're doing?
Everything
and
that
can you tell us the impact?
Yes. Everything that I've heard Mr. Walid say, I wanted to ask, but I thought the World Bank does most of that, or IMF. Because if you are supporting the government in economic policies and ensuring that they implement it, the World Bank does that all the time.
Yeah, exactly. So you've got the World Bank doing something, you've got the UNDP, because the UNDP has that mandate.
Yes,
the global mandate under the UN umbrella to look at developmental issues. So how do you come in? I think the question then would go to the government itself. When you're working with all these agencies, how do you have a table that sits and harmonizes everything, every support that's coming? EU is supporting, World Bank, IMF, UN and all the UN agencies and funds, and look at all the other development partners. Is there one table that looks at? So we've got, in terms of water, this is what we want to do as a government, and this is the support that we are getting. This is where these guys are plugging, and this is the impact. Because if you don't have that, then you're...
I'm sure we do, but also significantly, when you talk about automation, when you talk about robots, we talk about mechanization.
Yes.
You see, I think all those things are a clear indicator of humanity improving itself and its services. My problem is with the lies. Stop saying it doesn't replace people. It does.
It replaces some people, but also it gives employment to others.
Not only that, it may give employment to others, but believe me.
It's just like the agrarian revolution or the industrial revolution. Did it replace some people?
Oh, yes. Not some.
Yeah.
It replaced a lot of people.
Did it create new jobs?
Not only... The new jobs it does, but the new jobs are fewer because you have this machine that one person can operate.
That essentially takes away the jobs of 20 people.
Yes, exactly. That's what I'm saying. Now,
and then you have
it's more efficient.
You have a new
it's more
job
productive.
where now more people are are working on creating
And like
a machine.
it doesn't go to sleep. It doesn't take a day off. It doesn't go on leave.
It only stops for
but that is
servicing.
assuming that the human capacity is only limited to what the human was doing before, plucking the tea. Can you make the machine? Same human being?
You see, Eric, the argument that is never brought forth, and why I'm saying that the lie is what I'm against, is the honest truth about the human element in the workplace. Mechanization is all about efficiency and improvement, and you can't argue against it. However, the issue of improving the ability of the human being to understand these processes, my friend, you cannot say that there's an equal replacement of those who lose their jobs with those.
And sometimes you don't need one. Nowadays, you pick a call, you call me directly. In years go by, you'd have to call an operator to connect you to me.
Yes.
Do you need that anymore? You don't. Good morning. It's now 8 o'clock. Let's look at the traffic.
Spice up your life. 102.5 Spice FM, Kisumu.
Okay, some complaints this morning. I want to know what exactly is happening with Mombasa traffic. Not Mombasa road traffic, but Mombasa town traffic. So talk to us on Spice FM KE and let us know what it looks like there so we can warn people of, where they're going to this morning. So in Nairobi, back again, Riara Road, Kingara Road traffic this morning is crazy. There's some traffic police there, but that doesn't seem to be working. And everybody's trying to move at the same time. So if you're headed in that direction or coming out of that, there's uplies, some serious traffic. There are cops ahead, so hopefully they'll be able to sort that one out for us, right? Coming off from Gong Road and then getting towards the City Mortuary roundabout, it slows down quite some. If you're going then towards Bagathi Way, you should be all right, then out that way. But then if you're headed towards Valley Road, you're going to have to slow down a little bit because there's some traffic. It's piled up all the way back there. Western's still a trouble spot right now. Coming off of Thika Road is moving a little bit smoother than before. Kiambu Road, well, now that's a totally different story. We'll look at that and see how it opens up soon enough. All right. So traffic continues this Thursday morning. It's likely to continue for a while. Let us know where you find it easier so that other folks can join in. Spice FM KE on Twitter. That's how you can get in touch or text on 40127.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latin, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is The Situation Room, the only
2
way to
minutes after
start
8,
your day.
Conversation continues right here on Spice FM. We are live on radio, online, and on TV, KTN Home. Let's begin the hour with the day's proverb. Again, CT.
Right. Good men must die, but death cannot kill their names.
Good men must die.
They must die. They will die.
But death cannot kill their names.
Yes. In the same way, men who are considered to be evil or bad must die, and death will not eradicate that bad name.
Okay. So men, good or bad, must die.
Well, it's a certainty, that's for sure.
But death will also not eradicate their name.
No.
Okay. So, Ndu, let's talk about what Kenyans want in 2021.
Right. So, a survey was done a couple of weeks ago, coming into the new year. And this was carried out by Infotrack, trying to then look at, so we want to know what Kenyans are looking forward to after a year that really dealt blows that people, number one, did not expect, and then people did not imagine the impact that it would have on their lives, from livelihoods having been decimated, children were out of school, government having to bail people out here and there. So coming into the new year, what it is that people really want. And Kenyans had quite a lot to say. But of the things that rang true and saying these are the things that are served right at the top. Here we are, and according to InfoTrack, at the top is that Kenyans are looking for better health, they're looking for improved employment, and they're looking for an increased economic or rather increased spending capacity when it comes to what they're able to do. Okay, so those are the top three that came out here. So it looks like health was a big problem in 2020, and not just health of feeling well, but access to health and then being able to pay for it, right? And then the other one that Kenyans were looking for at the top of the line was they were also looking for better livelihoods. So this year, can we have a little bit more money in the pocket and then be able to fend for our families in a better way? And then looking at the country overall, that for things to get better economically, that can we actually have a situation where we're not going through these ebbs and flows, but that we have some kind of constant positive economic situation in the country. And these are the things that Kenyans are looking for in 2021. The factors that were going to make this happen are, of course, something totally different. The economy, high cost of living, unemployment, healthcare are the key things that Kenyans want sorted in 2021.
High cost of living,
and that needs to be sorted out, yes. Unemployment, healthcare, and the economy. Because those are the things that dealt Kenyans a blow in 2020 and hoping that these things then be sorted out. We must understand also that the economy was, flailing even before COVID, right? There were some problems there, and it didn't seem like that was getting any better. And then COVID came in and threw all of this out the window. The high cost of living, it became more difficult, could be attributed to, many things. Because the economy is suffering, then certain things would definitely become more expensive. Things like fuel, when there was some kind of reprieve, eventually went back up. And so when things like fuel go up, other commodities go up as well. Healthcare, like we said, healthcare is not just about going to hospital and feeling better, but access to healthcare and health facilities that you can actually afford. A lot of people went through the fundraisings for health issues that family members of theirs would have. So then, number one, people don't have the capacity to buy insurance, to buy health insurance. A lot of healthcare is out of pocket, and we saw 2020 for Kenyans that it was very, very difficult to access healthcare.
Listening to those things, actually, just it then says that when the Jubilee administration decided to come up with those big four agenda, they were basically addressing these things. Healthcare, talk about job and the cost of living. You're talking about manufacturing that then increases the opportunities for employment. Talk about housing, talk about food security. So those have actually been addressed in some way here. I mean, are the issues that Kenyans are talking about and grappling with on a daily basis. So you can say the government was right there, it had the finger on the pulse. Now, the implementation of it is where now we can ask, okay, so why are we slow on this? Why are we facing challenges here? And also you can then start questioning government and asking the government, are we then getting to a point where you saw like these four are not working and you're not going to be able to deliver, and you brought in a new project altogether called the BBI that is going to make people forget about this? Because when you look at all these things, people have not talked about stability, people have not talked about representation, people have not talked about justice and all, which is like the main things that we are pushing for in the constitutional amendment. Is there a disconnect somewhere between this, or do these have a solution in the BBI in one way or the other?
And further to tell you that...
Because this is a government agenda for 2021. We are in a constitutional moment. The president has told us more than 2 times, more than 3 times. This is what Kenyans are saying. Mr. President, fix the economy, address the high cost of living, create jobs, make health care accessible and affordable, improve the quality of education, deal with corruption firmly and decisively. This is a priority ask for Kenyans. This is a priority give by the government.
You said something
Connect.
that if it would have seemed that the government had its hand on the pulse when it was coming with the four, when the president came up with the Big Four agenda, right? Then somewhere along the line, that kind of flew out the window, and then we brought in BBI. Okay, so that means that they know, it is known what Kenyans need. It is known what the agenda of the country should be. It's known what should be done. However, the implementation, as we've often said, is the problem. And not just the implementation of the actual operations of everything, but the desire to do it. The desire to actually get it done is non-existent. It's very nice to say it and talk about it and make you feel
You
some
think the
kind
desire
of...
is non... Yeah,
The desire to get these things done?
You're being kind of harsh.
How?
Non-existent.
The desire to get... Look, you want something to do. You want something done today. You want to get it done, my friend, you will get it done. You will not ask how, where, you will find it.
Ask yourself a simple question.
If you want to get
Does the
something done, you'll do
government
it.
have a problem borrowing money?
They wanted to borrow money, they borrowed. They wanted to raise the ceiling.
They
They
needed
rose
to
it.
borrow money. That's what.
Yes, but they borrowed it.
At this point, they needed to borrow
They
money.
found
to get things done, you
every
get it
which
done.
way
You
that
get
was
it
available.
done. City keeps giving the example of Kibaki and his term here. What did he do? Infrastructure project, stop it. Not maybe, not okay, let's
Stop.
do half of this one. Stop it. Collect. Borrowing, 0. We're not borrowing anything. What happened? Do you mean to tell me that there were not times when you feel a little bit of a pinch here and you say, oh, okay, maybe we need to borrow a little bit more, or maybe we need to develop here or develop? Of course they did.
Yeah.
But what did they do? They had something that they wanted to do. The desire and the will was there, and they followed through with it. By the time you're coming up with an agenda, by the time you're coming up with a plan, it's hopeful that you would have not just the plan in your mind, but how you are going to execute it. And you say, this is what we need to get it done. The person who said, where there's a will, there's a way, was not joking. Because it would be clear that you wanted certain things to be done. You say that you had the finger was on the pulse, and they knew what needed to happen. This is what Kenyans need. This is what my government should have then been known for. Now, in actually getting it done, what were we told? We set the foundation for this agenda.
Yeah, it's still the focus of even the next
The
financial
agenda has
year.
been set. So anybody else who
Even the
comes
next
just
financial year, the
build on
budget
the-
is going into the Big Four, all right? But it's still a big
Big Four.
Big
There
Four.
is nothing wrong with the Big Four agenda.
No, it's beautiful actually.
Nothing, absolutely
No.
nothing. It's a good plan. There's nothing wrong with these mega super highways that we are planning with 6 lanes on each side and 12 on the other. Nothing wrong with them at all. The issue that we keep bringing up is marrying the reality of what our politicians think is their priority and the needs of the Mwananchi. Because what they tell us and what they do, there is such a disconnect. The disconnect is what brings us to the position where we say, excuse me, how do you want us to believe what you're telling us when we have a history of you saying similar things and the results have been dismal? The outcome has almost been non-existent. How do you then want us to believe what you're saying now? So we have a trust deficit. It's a serious currency, and unfortunately, it keeps growing.
It keeps growing.
Yes.
I think where the big issue comes is in the government communication. Because clearly the government understands that these are the needs of Kenyans. These are the clear, direct, and pressing needs of Kenyans. Government understands economic situation. Even its own projection is that the GDP growth is not going to be as fast as it was projected initially. The government knows that there are people who now are falling closer and closer to that poverty gap where they had risen above. Government knows all these things. Government knows that we need healthcare and to improve our healthcare system and access to healthcare. Government knows all these things. And government is, at the same time as it's doing everything else, is working on this. They're working on improving healthcare. They're working on... You can argue about the pace at which they're doing things. You can argue about everything else. They are working on how you can get more shillings to people's pockets. improve their livelihoods. Okay, and the employment
you're talking about this
creation.
is happening now.
Yeah.
Oh, okay,
I'm
okay.
sure they're doing that.
Okay.
They're doing all those things. The problem comes with when their main focus and conversation all the time is not on this, does not seem to be addressing this. It does not seem to be saying, so this is where we are in terms of job creation. We had the CAS for agriculture here the other day. She was talking about the projects that the Ministry of Agriculture is rolling out across the country where youth can plug in agribusiness. If this was the focus of government in its communication on a daily basis, that youth, if you're in this county, this is what you can do, you can access this, you can get this support. If that was the conversation, every time the president is speaking, he's speaking from that angle. Not just saying my government has rolled out plans and set aside 275 billion shillings. Not just saying that, but being granular.
Eric,
go to this region and say, this is what we're doing.
Are you saying that
like
they haven't done it, or are you saying they're not capable of doing it?
I'm just saying they're not communicating
they're
in that
doing
way.
it, but they're not communicating.
They're not
so by
communicating
virtue of the
in
fact
that
that
way.
they're not communicating this, and what they are communicating is a different kind of government, and in terms of who will have the power, that is what the majority of Kenyans are focusing on. That even if all this work is happening in the country, and because you're not talking about it, now you're making it seem as if you're not actually doing it. So the thing would be to say that all these projects that are going on, which would somehow be plugged into the Big Four agenda, for example, if you took the time to communicate about this, that this is what is happening in the country, then Kenyans would feel as if you were doing something. But if every time we hear you speak or see your mouth move, what comes out is BBI, then that is what we think that you are focusing on. And that is what we think that where all the government might is going.
Yes.
We will never believe that you are actually focusing on agriculture. We will never believe that you're focusing on infrastructure or development or education or the health sector, or that there's certain things that you're doing around that. Okay, which I do believe. I would be pained to think that all these ministries go to work and everybody comes home every day and doesn't do anything.
Yes.
Okay, it would be a bit pathetic. However, you don't talk about it, we're just going to assume that you're not doing it. Two, if you're talking about something else, we're going to assume that all the money is going there and all the attention is focused there.
It could also be another truth, because focus is focus. Focus doesn't mean the only thing. It could mean that, yes, all these projects are ongoing, but in terms of priority, they are number 7 on the priority list. Your number 1 to 6 priority is what you keep telling us about every day. Which is, this about you are this lion, and that there's a BBI that we're going to sort out. We're going to push and ram through the BBI into a referendum. This is what is your first, second, third, up to 6th point of focus in your priority list. These are things about people getting jobs. There will be jobless people, whether there is BBI or not. People will die. If they're not dying of COVID, they'll die of something else. Let's have BBI. This is the conversation we hear from our leaders. So that could actually be pointing to, that's the focus. And when such surveys are conducted by such organizations as Infotrack, and saying the people's focus is not on leadership, the people's focus is not on the structure of supreme law, the people's focus is not on this and the other, the people's focus is on fix the economy. The people's focus, number 2, address the high cost of living, create jobs. These are all immediate to middle term. These are all today's problems. And you must find a way of telling us that you actually are dealing with our today's problems. The government seems not to be bothered about our today's problems.
But why does a government take certain things for granted? And its people. There's a Kenyan term for when you're taken for granted. Why are they assuming they're people?
Or meant to assume.
Yes.
Assume.
Why are they assuming?
Or meant to assume.
Okay.
Yes. Because that assuming of your people has consequences. Look, it can't be that every sector of the economies and the Mwananchi who are players in that economy, it can't be that every one of them in every sector has a complaint. Remember earlier on we were talking about a report, an article in the Business Daily that talked about the government talking about saving something like 152 billion. If you cancel a project and you had a contract with a contractor. What do you think is going to happen? That person is going to take you to court.
Yep.
You know, there's no saving. It doesn't matter how you look at this thing, and yet it's being presented as though they're going to save money. Where is it?
Yeah.
I think the government deliberately does not communicate the things we keep asking. It's not accidental. Why do I say this? Government, the mandarins, the people who work within government sectors, my friend, if there's something they know how to do, is to present reports. The problem always comes at the point where those reports are now supposed to be actioned or they're supposed to be taken forward or taken. That's where. But in terms of understanding, why do you think, for instance, that there's usually a hue and cry when you have all these agencies that do opinion polls, when they bring about the results? See, as you're going through that list, I was asking, what questions did they ask? Because, my friend, you can predetermine a response with a question that you ask and how you ask it.
Can always come out.
Yes, I've given that example before of a project I was once involved in, and we were talking. Those are the days when the diaphragm was considered to be a very effective family planning tool. Okay, among the very few that existed, and the questions and that we were asking women. One question we asked women. These are high-risk women. Do you always use or do you always insist that your partners use protection? And the 100% response was yes. And a year into the project, a 3-year project, we'd have meetings every end of year to summarize what we're doing, meet with all the women. And I noticed there were all these small children, toddlers, babies, and I thought, oh, maybe this is an income-generating project that they've started to look after daycare for children. So I ventured to ask. And every one of the women who were attending that meeting told me these were their children. So the story of partners using 100% protection went out of the window. So I asked, what were we asking? So I posed the question, are there partners with whom you don't use the condom? And the answer was, yes, of course. I said, really? And who are they? And they were told, wakawaida. So these weren't just people who paid you for sex, but these are people who also paid your rent, gave you food.
So those are not business partners. Those
not
are life
not
partners.
really. Those are partners who, that's what they call kawaida. It wasn't necessarily one, but one paid rent, one did the other, one did the other. So with those ones, you do not use protection. Hence, the baby, the outcome. Now, why do I give this example? When you ask a question, as I said, you can more or less predetermine the response. So what questions do our friends who do these surveys, remember, many they're telephone calls, and you ask certain questions. They begin by asking you, this is what we do. We want to ask you a few questions. Are you willing to answer? And the answer is yes. And then they ask you, what are these questions? Because the questions they ask will determine the answers.
Okay, so let's look at this particular question, for example. The result is, how would you rate the government's overall handling of the COVID-19 pandemic on a scale of 1 to 10, where 1 is extremely poor and 10 is excellent? How would you rate the government's overall handling of COVID-19 pandemic on a scale of 1 to 10? Extremely poor to excellent. 47% of Kenyans believe the government's performance in the handling of COVID-19 has been average. 22% think the performance has been excellent. Clear?
It is clear.
Clear question, clear answer.
Yeah.
Where maybe you could have an issue is with looking at health workers who are voted as the heroes of 2020 by 42% of Kenyans. And the others who are voted as heroes, that is 42% health workers. 12% of those who were asked this question said President Uhuru Kenyatta was their hero for 2020. 11% the Ministry of Health, 10% the Deputy President William Ruto, Chief Justice David Maraga 6%, religious organizations 4%, Raila Odinga 4%, the media 3%, county governments 3%, the police 2%, private sector 2%, and parliamentarians, both National Assembly and the Senate, 1%.
Hey, we are ahead of the parliamentarians.
We're doing well.
We are
at 3%.
3%.
So this is the question. Tell me whether that talks to you about the heroes. As you reflect on this very difficult year for Kenyans that is finally coming to an end, Which one of the following people and institutions would you say has been your hero? And then there's that list that's given.
There's a list that's given essentially then to
Who has
choose
been
from.
your hero? The other issue that you could raise is the understanding of the question. Because when you ask me, which among these is your hero? And then you tell me, health workers, president, Raila, chief justice, media, religious organizations, Ministry of Health, legislators. How do you determine what hero is? I mean, hero is not something that you use on a daily basis. Oh, Ndu, you're my hero.
I know.
So how would you answer it? I mean, what is it that influences your choice here?
Oh, that is not difficult to respond to, because you will look at your circumstances, and you will look at the circumstances that involve the company you keep, the people you talk with, your 10 best friends, and the people you mingle with, and the view that is generally held by the people around you, and the consensus you've all arrived at, and what is normally discussed. Haven't you had this feeling sometimes you talk to people, you ask them, did they agree to talk in the same way? Now, a telephone call and somebody asking for information, how do you think somebody is likely to respond? Do you think they are likely to tell you the absolute truth of what they really feel or think, or will they respond and tell you what they think is possible or what they feel you might perhaps want to hear? Very rarely do people actually tell you, very rarely. If
their inner truth.
No. If talking to them one-on-one, in research, there's something they call probing. Somebody answers a question you ask. Why have you said this? What has influenced this? Is it likely that if you're given more information, you might change your mind? Now, that's where the government communication aspect comes in. Given the information they have, that's their feeling at that particular point in time. I am saying this, that the responses are accurate insofar as that particular poll goes. They asked, they were answered. There are those like me who would say, in the absence of a probe, you're not really sure that whether that is actually what they genuinely feel.
Maybe not, eh?
That's what they told you in the
Because if you look at it, then it tells you that the government is actually rated very highly by the people in the year 2020.
Yes.
If you look at the president at 12%, the deputy president at 10%, the Ministry of Health at 11%, and then the chief justice at 6%. People felt that their government was their hero.
Yes.
Various aspects of the government. So they're happy with the government.
Oh, no. That's a different question.
No. That's a different question.
Oh, that's a very different question.
It doesn't mean that it just because somebody is your hero doesn't then mean that you're happy with them. No. Different question.
Eric, don't mix
the
up
dynamics
the two.
of this. Essentially, the dynamics would change when you change the question, right?
You ask a specific
question and you get an answer for that question. You change it, you get a different answer.
27 minutes after 8. Let's take a break here on Spice FM, on KTN Home and online. We want to ask you, what are your priority areas for 2021? What is it that the government should focus on in 2021? According to this research by InfoTrack, people want healthcare sorted, fix the economy, get us jobs, get us affordable and accessible healthcare, among others. What is it that you want? 0719-012-600. We'll pick your calls after the break.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day. Spice up your life. 24/7, around the world, non-stop. This is Spice FM.
Did you know that knowing your HIV status is simple? You can visit your nearest health center where you will be tested for free, or you can test yourself using the self-kits sold at chemists for 500 shillings only. If you test HIV positive, don't fear, because there is medication that will allow you to live your normal life. You will also be counseled on how to live with HIV and fulfill your life goals or dreams. Knowing your HIV status as a parent is beneficial for yourself and your loved ones. Expectant mothers with HIV, did you know it's possible to deliver a healthy, uninfected baby? Visit a health facility near you during your antenatal visits to get proper information, advice, and treatment for HIV. HIV treatment can improve your overall health and can protect an unborn baby from contracting HIV before, during delivery, and after birth. We must not exclude or discriminate against our HIV-positive counterparts because living with the virus is not a curse. Follow the Ministry of Health's instructions to protect ourselves from HIV and also to protect ourselves from the coronavirus that causes COVID-19. Do you know your status? This message has been brought to you by the National AIDS Control Council.
All right, the sun is peeking through those clouds in Nairobi, 14 degrees, temperatures dipping ever so slightly. We'll go to highs of 28 today and then back up to lows of 15. 15 is what it is in Nyeri and sunny, highs of 25 and lows of 12. 28 is the high in Nakuru today, 16 at the moment and sunny. It's a bit cool in Eldoret this morning at 9, highs of 26 and lows of 12. Sunny conditions in Kisumu at 17, highs of 30 and lows of 19. Kakamega is sunny at 17, going to highs of 31. 33 will be the high in Mombasa, where 31 will be the high in Malindi. It's mostly sunny in Kampala at 20, highs of 27 and lows of 19. Dar es Salaam is sunny as well, highs of 32 and lows of 25. Light rain in Johannesburg at 18 degrees, going to highs of 23 and lows of 16. Clear conditions in Lagos now. That fog seems to have lifted, going to highs of 33 and lows of 24 today, whereas Kinshasa is sunny at 23. It'll go to highs of 30 and back down to lows of 23.
Are you ready? Okay.
Spice FM. Traffic.
Okay, guys, so how has it changed now? We are still looking at heavy conditions on Thika Road, especially coming off of Kiambu Road today. So if you're on Kiambu Road, just know that today, sometime during the morning, you will join Thika Road and be happy just like everybody else. Okay, so getting into the CBD, if you're on Kiambu Road today, nah. All right, let's look at Jogo Road, getting into Landis Road, getting into the city center. A bit slow, but it's not too bad. It's not a bumper-to-bumper situation. Mombasa Road, of course, still blocked this morning. The Pangani overpass today in both directions. Bumper to what? To bumper. That's what it looks like right now. So if you're in that direction also, just take it easy. Yeah, so that's what it looks like right now. 8:30 on the nose. Let's see what it looks like at 9, shall we? Talk to us. Spice FM KE on Twitter. Text on 40127. Let's try to keep it moving, shall we?
Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
The conversation continues right here in the Situation Room. Eric Latif, CT Muga, and Nduoko. What key things would you like to see sorted by the government in Kenya in the year 2021? Let's go to the phone lines 0719 012 600. We're also asking the question on our social media platform, Spice FM KE, on Facebook and Twitter. Mila Menga in Siaya, good morning.
Good morning, Eric.
How are you today, Mila?
I'm good.
Hey.
Salimia Indu and City.
Good morning, Mila.
Good morning, sir. How are you today?
I'm okay. Now I have a comment. And I thought Indu could have defended Magufuli. And
Why?
he left City to hit because she's a Pan-Africanist.
Okay, she is a Pan-Africanist.
Yes, she is.
Uh-huh.
You know, I think Magufuli is very right. And some people are taking a safe face is being ignorant. You know, that is a president. We watched what was happening in Tanzania. And that guy got votes of Tanzanians in a scale that I was not even imagining. So this is a gentleman who is loved by his people, meaning he's doing something on the ground.
The perception is that he's loved by his people. Your perception is that, okay. Uh-huh.
Yes, and that perception is okay. And two, you know, when we first heard of COVID, And I want to start by saying that me personally, as an individual, if that vaccine comes, I will not take it. And the background is this. Do you know that we have a vaccine for influenza? And how many people are taking that vaccine today? And two, you know, when COVID came, the narrative that we got was that this is a public health issue. And public health issues basically focuses on preventive. And the government did very well to educate us, and we now know how to prevent COVID-19. Then all of a sudden, the conversation has shifted to the vaccine, and that is the focus. And my question is, okay, let me put it this way. You know, if you look at the figures today in Kenya, we have 100,000 people already infected with the virus, meaning that in every 500 people, one person is infected. It means this thing is in the community. It is everywhere, and that is the reality. That is factual, going with the figures. Then come back to the number of people who are passed on. Currently in Kenya, we are at 1,800. That means in every 28,000, only one person dies. Now, put yourself in Magufuli's situation. He knows this is a public health issue. We must focus on the preventive. This is a disease that doesn't have a high mortality rate like it is expected. And then, this is a disease that has put the whole world at ransom. Everything is scattered. And then you wonder, why all this? Why is it that the whole world is put in something that is not so much serious? Going with the figures. And the world is captive.
So a vaccine should only focus on what is serious. Is that what you're saying?
No. Now let me also put another fact. In the first instance, we are told about herd immunity. And it is becoming real now that we are surviving on herd immunity. Because if you won in every, that means in every primary school in the country, one person there has COVID. And with the rate of infection of COVID, and the new strain that is now coming up, that now it is Africa, it is the new strain is originating from. I think there's something we must interrogate further.
Okay.
And then
Mila,
the unfortunate thing.
I think you're right in as far as saying let's interrogate.
Yes.
You're right in looking at the figures and looking at what is the overall impact of COVID-19. But at the same time, let's also look at that reality. The reality is COVID-19 spreading globally? Yes, it is. Is COVID-19 infection rate high? Yes, it is. Is the rate of people who are dying high? If you compare to other diseases like Ebola, maybe not. You can argue, maybe. But is there a need to have it as a global conversation? Yes, it is. So, is there a need to have a conversation about vaccine, just like for immunization, just like it happens with other epidemics? Yes, there is. I think the question then should not be that you cannot take a vaccine because it now has become the global focus. And I think that's why you're losing me.
No. I'm saying let's talk about the vaccine. But now what Magufuli is saying, me personally, I want to discuss specifically on how Magufuli came out and talked about it. Magufuli is not putting his head in the sand and saying that it doesn't exist. He's saying that yes, it exists. But he's telling his people...
And where exactly does he say it exists? Tell me, point me to what he has actually said.
In other parts of the world.
But yesterday he said clearly that some people have gone to take vaccine outside and they are coming back with COVID. He said that yesterday. Yeah, and he knows, he knows that it exists. Nobody is denying that it doesn't exist. But he's saying that let us focus on herd immunity. Let us focus on... No, one thing that he's saying is that, okay, don't wear a mask. that is the weak side of it. But when you focus on the herd immunity, and it is real in Kenya,
that is not his focus.
If one in every 500.
You've chosen a part of what he said and focused on it. He said a lot more. He called vaccines generally dangerous. And he asked questions that have been responded to. Unfortunately for him, he mentioned the non-existence of a TB vaccine. It actually exists. For TB, it exists. I mean, look, it isn't as though the world of medical science and research just does things overnight. COVID is unusual in that it's one of those rare occasions where you have a problem that the entire world, literally the entire world has. So, and the entire world is dealing with it. Some are being affected a lot more than others, but there it is. Now, when someone says that these things are dangerous, the vaccines, the things that are supposed to allay these, then you have to ask yourself, what on earth does he expect his people to do, and how does he expect them to respond to such a thing? He's the president.
Yeah, sure. And Miller, we've got to look at this properly, right? If you don't see a high death rate in some countries, look at the countries whereby you do see a very high death rate. We are looking at, for example, 400,000, almost 500,000 people in the United States dead, contributing to a global problem. And these are not made-up stories. These are people who were alive and are dead as a result of this one virus that is ravaging the entire globe. So I think we must be careful not to... And when we look at the details of this, in my opinion, one life from a virus is too many, right?
Yes.
But now we're looking at global figures of millions of people having died. We cannot ignore that. We can't ignore that. And to have somebody who has the responsibility of leading a nation to talk about an essential guard against this virus as dangerous, that in itself is dangerous.
Or experimenting the lives of an entire population that you're supposed to look after based on your understanding, your beliefs or disbeliefs. Now that is dangerous.
Now, let me say that I'm not underplaying what is happening in the world. And again, Magufuli understands Tanzania better than I, and he knows what is good for his people. I don't think he's an ignorant person who was just given. He knows what he's talking about. The problem he has is that he's an outlier. And basically, if you're an
Miller, he's also a politician.
No, yes, I am.
No, not you. Magufuli. Him. Magufuli is a politician.
Yeah, he is. But let us go with the figures. Now, let us go with the facts. Instead of politicking about it, look at our country. Look at our country and the reality that we have in our country. If one in every, I want to repeat this, if 1 in every 500 has COVID, then it means COVID is at community level. It is everywhere in the country. That is the reality.
And what makes you think Tanzania is different? Because if you're talking about facts are we have no clue what is happening in Tanzania. Information doesn't flow freely from Tanzania.
No, but you see, even if it doesn't flow, we know it is in Tanzania.
If it doesn't flow, then how do we know, Miller?
Now, do we know that COVID is there? We know COVID is there. And if we know COVID is there, we know how it spreads. And if we know how it spreads, we know it is in Tanzania. So it is factual that it is in Tanzania. But let us go with the figures. How many people are dying of COVID?
Where?
How many people are dying of COVID where?
You know these numbers, Miller, when they are brought out into the public domain. In Tanzania, we have no clue what is happening. We don't know about the figures. We know nothing about COVID and maternity. Nothing.
You have a world tracking mechanism right now for COVID. The only way this mechanism gets the information is that individual countries are presenting the reports to them on a daily basis. Now, if you don't have the reports from country X, Y, Z, there is no way that information can be made public. How do you know that people are dying in Tanzania if that information is not coming out? You know that 500 people, 1,000 people have died in the United States because the government of the country is reporting that information. You know that 1,800 people in Kenya are said to have died from COVID because the Ministry of Health is reporting that information. You cannot report what you don't have or what you don't know. You can't do it.
Now, my point is this. When you do random sampling, for every research that you want to do, you do random sampling. And for countries that are reporting in Africa, we can do random sampling, and we can take, let me say that Tanzania is excluded. If you do a random sampling in Africa, for countries that are reporting, we can know what is happening in Tanzania. Definitely. I don't want to lie to you. We can know what is happening in Tanzania.
No,
and
we can conjecture.
We can infer.
But we cannot
state categorically.
That is true. I accept. But we can infer. And that is the basis of research. And if that is factual, then we can know what is happening in Tanzania.
Repeat that again, Mila. I missed it. What did you say was the basis of research again?
If you do random sampling, you just do random sampling in Africa, and you say that we have 56 countries in Africa, and we know what they are reporting. Now we can know the infection rate in Africa, generally. And that will give us the figures in Tanzania. That will give us the figures in Tanzania.
What that will do, it will give you an indication of what could be generally assumed to be happening in Tanzania.
I think we're getting into a potato conversation.
I agree.
So what you're saying is there's a highest probability of likelihood that COVID is also spreading and having its effect in Tanzania as it is having in other countries.
Exactly.
Now, does that... So where now do you bring in the argument that then they should not think about vaccination?
No. That is the point of my argument. Now, when you bring the issue of vaccination, and Magufuli was very, very, very categorical, that we must question the repercussion we might have by taking the vaccine. And I gave you an example that now...
No, he's right. There's no argument there. The questioning, he does not have an argument. We agree with him fully. If he's questioning that, if he's stating that we must query and we must probe, we accept and we agree.
I don't want to get into the politics of Magufuli because I think Magufuli. Okay, you are putting me into this one.
Yes, we are. Or rather, should I say yes? I am.
Magufuli is looking at the economics of all this.
Now you are giving Magufuli you are actually giving him a role and a purpose that he did not state.
No. But we can say that in Africa today, we have challenges because of COVID-19. We can clearly say that we have challenges because of COVID-19. And he's telling his people that if you don't work, if you don't mingle, and it will come back to herd immunity. It will come back to herd immunity. Why are we not mingling and why... I'm not saying that he's doing the right thing or is the right person, but I'm just looking at facts. If it will now come down to herd immunity, why are you telling people not to mingle and work and go on? I'm not telling somebody not to take the vaccine because every individual knows his status and every individual has the capacity to decide what they want to do with their lives. And Magufuli is also telling his people that, okay, you have a decision to make, but we need to know that it will definitely come back to herd immunity. My point is home.
Okay.
All right, Mila. We hear you.
Thank you.
And others have heard you as well. Thank you very much. Mila Menga is in Siaya. Thank you for your contribution. And we also would like to hear what you think about this. So, coming back into the conversation that we were having just before we went to the break and took the call from Mila, things that Kenyans would like to see sorted out in the country. Unemployment needs to be addressed ASAP. That's the numbers are surging, occasioned by the COVID-19 pandemic. This is what Kennedy Omondi is saying. Huntington is saying. The alternate reality gathered from the Infotrack report is that police are doing their job, okay, by people saying, a certain percentage of them saying that they feel that the police, 2%, saying the police were their heroes. He says the other side of looking at that or reading that is that people are saying police are doing their job. A society that's happy with their police is at risk. Weissman says, jobs, jobs, jobs. That is what people want to see. Jobs, jobs, jobs. Curfew tolewe, Brian Kuyanda says. Curfew tolewe. Johanna is just bringing some fun and humor into this and says, we should be included in the deep state deals of billions and trillions. Really. There are things that Kenyans are saying that this is what we'd like our government to focus on in terms of, dealing with the challenges that we get into 2021 with. How do those relate to what the government is focusing on as its priority? Is the government then addressing the priority needs of its citizens, or is the government addressing the priority needs of the government? Or maybe there's a link between what the government is doing is actually going to solve the challenges that Kenyans have said, these are our challenges. When people say we want our jobs, we want jobs today. The government cannot wake up today and say, all right, read tomorrow's paper, you'll see job advertisements. And we can apply for those.
It's interesting because when we spoke about the Kazi Mtani, that one, we spoke with P.S. Hinga. And one of the things that he talked about many months ago was that they hope to look at some kind of permanency to the situation where people would work casually and get this money on a weekly basis. That it would be something that they would really like to think about, to see that there's so much work that needs to be done in the country. Is there a way that they can now incorporate Kenyans who don't have work into these projects and have them earn something for it? And he saw that as opposed to say we're going to create 100,000 jobs, for example. There are ongoing projects within the country that you can bring Kenyans into, that they can work and
you
earn
can stimulate
something.
Job creation.
Absolutely, you can stimulate job creation. Now this would be right along the lines of what people are hoping can be done, because what is it that we want?
And I think the government is doing that. You see, now when the government invests in infrastructure projects, and the idea was, let's put some money into infrastructure projects, repair the dilapidated infrastructure, bridges and roads that were washed away by floods. And that employs people. Let's look at Kazi Mtaani. Kazi Mtaani is use the local communities to clean up their environment and come up with projects. So counties were looking at what is our priority project that we are doing. Others were constructing new hospital wards, and the local youth would be employed and paid from these Kazi Mtaani programs and projects. So that is something that was, you can say, in terms of stimulus and to stimulate this into stimulating a jump-starting the economy. Yeah. There are people who sat back at the National Treasury and planning and decided this is something that can happen. It can be done. Now, how high on the priority list is it for the government and for the leadership of the country? Is it way up there where we are saying, all hands on deck, we are looking at how many people have had a new opportunity today? All hands on deck, how many new people have moved from a situation where last week they did not have an income-generating activity, and this week they have an income-generating activity? No matter how minuscule. How all hands on deck, how many people now have access to a health facility? Previously, they were not able to access a health facility. Now, within a month, within 2 months, they're able to access a health facility that is working, that is functioning. Maybe that's where now the questions come in. For me, that's where the questions are.
You know that water gets muddied rather seriously, because a health facility without the means to provide the health intervention that someone seeks is not very useful. Now, it is the story of our lives. It is the story of the strikes we've had in the health sector. You go to work, but the wherewithal, the things that you need to actually do what you're supposed to do, even before the PPEs and the stories of safety equipment came into being, that was always the case. But then the underlying issue was medication, medical treatment was, at some point, it was supposed to be free. No such thing. Suppose it never was. Never was free. You had to come with your own little notebook for prescriptions. You had to bring your own bottle where you can be given medication. If it's medication that can be put in a bottle, you would be given the basic tablets for headache and what have you. But then there was a pharmacist not very far from the hospital where you could now go and buy the rest. But also, there were times when that very, very doctor who was attending to you would attend to you in greater detail if you went to a clinic that they mentioned to you. It's whenever we discuss these things, the underlying issues are always greater than the actual issue itself. And there doesn't seem to be a solution in the horizon as to how this problem can actually be rectified. So
that's where we are.
That's where we are.
This is Kenya's biggest conversation, the Situation Room, broadcasting on Spice FM 94.4 in Nairobi, Mombasa 87.9, Nakuru is at 96.0, Kisumu 102.5, Eldoret 96.7, Nyeri 90.9, and Malindi 97.7. The show happens every weekday morning, 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. on Spice FM and online, Spice FM KE on Facebook, on YouTube and Twitter. And for 2 hours, we are live on KTN Home. The 2 hours on KTN Home are coming to an end now, 5 minutes to 9, but you can tune in to Spice FM on all those frequencies that I've said. But if you are moving out and you'll not be having access to a TV, a radio, or online, you can join us again tomorrow on KTN Home, 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. Conversations continue on Spice FM. Good morning.
Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself.
All right.
Mornings.
So those discussions and you know, the back and forth on everything else, on what's happening on in terms of the economy, what needs to be done, what needs to be sorted out this year, COVID-19 recovery strategy, what the researchers are saying, what the government focus is going to be. These are conversations we're going to keep having through and through. The conversation about John Magufuli, the president of Tanzania, what he has been quoted as saying, what he has said with regards to vaccination, the translation of that, the interpretation of that from the people, from the citizens of Tanzania and from others in the world, that's another conversation that also we must keep having. You see, all the reactions that are coming in is, look, this is Kenya, that is Tanzania, let's focus on Kenya. Others are saying, okay, you are misunderstanding Magufuli on what he's saying. Okay, Magufuli is talking from a Pan-Africanist point of view, and that's what Miller is saying. He's saying, oh, look at the agenda right now seems to be focused on everybody in the world spending money on purchasing this COVID vaccine. But is that really the focus? But let's hear from other callers. 0719-012-600. What do you think about the conversations we're having? Bernard in Nairobi, good morning.
Good morning, Eric. How are you?
Very well, thanks.
Good morning, Mwalimu and Ulu.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Yes, I think maybe I just start by saying Happy New Year. I've not been able to call you this year.
Thank you very much. New Year greetings to you as well.
Yes, and Mwalimu, I wanted to remind you the lady you're looking for from the coastal area was Mekatilili Wamenza.
That is very true. That was her name. And she was Giriama from a place called Magarini.
Yep.
Yes, she was Giriama, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, now on the issue of Magufuli. I think we need to note something that I've been noticing for a while, just not on the issue of COVID alone. Something that is scary that happens from our neighbors in Tanzania is that there are these two illnesses that somehow we have been able to probably eliminate them all together in Kenya. And as it seems, I don't know whether any of you has noticed in the last few months, we have beggars on our Kenyan streets and roads who are always on wheelchairs.
Oh, very true. And there are many, and the numbers keep increasing.
They keep increasing. Now,
Yes.
when you look closely at these individuals, you'll find that most of them are from our neighboring country of Tanzania. Now, there are two illnesses that we have been able to eliminate in Kenya in the names of leprosy and polio. These illnesses still persist in Tanzania because of the same mentality they have of saying that we will treat our illnesses in our own way, or they use their traditional medicine and they forgo the vaccines. Now, this ties to what we are seeing happening right now with Magufuli and the COVID issue. It will now actually be a big problem to the rest of the East African countries. That is my contribution, and maybe it's something that we really need to look at, because I keep wondering, especially like these beggars, does it mean that there's nobody in our government who sees them on these roads? They are now coming into social places. They wheel into social places and they actually demand for money. So it is a big problem, and we really need to look at it very, very critically. That's my contribution for the day.
Thank you very much, Bernard. Asante sana. Have a good day. 0719-012-600. The issue of vaccine and what is to be done about vaccine and vaccination and vaccine. So yeah, there are some people who have taken vaccine to be a very, big and hot topic of the day. There are those that look at vaccine and say, all right, so yeah, vaccine joins into the queue of the COVID issue, the COVID pandemic. It's a global pandemic. There are countries that are hard hit. There are countries that are less hard hit. There is how we're dealing with COVID as a globe, and individual states and how they are coping with COVID. Let's continue this conversation into the next hour, shall we? All right. And in the next hour, we will be asking you to call in and also post your comments on social media, Spice FM KE on Facebook, on YouTube, and on Twitter as well. And we'll be looking at traffic shortly. What's been happening on the roads since half an hour ago when you said there were some issues on some parts of the road as well. Okay, so let's engage on this. President John Pombe Magufuli and his views on COVID vaccine in specific. Good morning. It's now 9 o'clock.
Spice up your life. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
Mombasa Road. If you wanted to use the Eastern Bypass to avoid Mombasa Road, it seems that everybody else was thinking the same thing. And so now we have some traffic outbound on the Eastern Bypass. It's piling up rather quickly and getting into a bumper-to-bumper situation. So you might want to rethink that one if you're headed in that direction. The Southern Bypass, however, is smooth. Right around the new toll gate there, it slows down a little bit because of the added traffic, but then after that it is fine. Right around Bellevue, also on Mombasa Road, it's a clog up there all the way through past the Capital Centre and then out towards Nyayo Stadium. It's slow. Getting into the CBD from Uhuru Highway also slows down just a little bit, and right around Jogo Road, Landis Road there, going out, you should be all right. Okay, so that's what we're looking at now, guys. It shouldn't be too bad moving on from now, but we'll keep an eye on things and see how it opens up. You can talk to us if you need to. Spice FMKE on Twitter. You can also text us on 40127.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latin, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is The Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
It's 2.5 minutes after 9. This is Kenya's biggest conversation, and it continues for the next 1 hour. We are live on Radio 94.4 Nairobi, Mombasa. We are in Kisumu, Nakuru, Eldoret, Nyeri, Malindi, and we live stream the show as well online, Spice FM KE, on YouTube, on Facebook, and on Twitter. So some comments that have come in with regards to these statements attributed to Tanzania's President John Pombe Magufuli.
It's interesting. And Yati says, we are Kenya, not Tanzania, and we need the vaccine. And so that's what we focused on that. But it's important in terms of what's coming out from him. Mercy Kamal says, while you're at it, JP has a doctorate. Is it out of River Road in Tanzania? And there's a question about that. Okay. everyone has got their views, just as every individual has an opinion then in terms of what should happen with that vaccine and or those vaccinations and what he's saying about that. So, he's got his opinion from what people have to say, and he should be able to voice that. I'm still coming from the side that it is a dangerous thing to put out there in terms of, what you're saying and the position that you hold as a president of a country, and when you're telling people something like this. I mean, very many other things that to other folks would look hypocritical, especially when you're talking about vaccines in a broad and general manner. It should be then across the board. And unfortunately, it is not. It really isn't. It's not across the board. Is there something specific about COVID that has his knickers in a twist? Or what really is it if you look behind all of this?
The thing about what he's saying, he's not necessarily just talking about the COVID vaccine. Okay? Because if Magufuli was talking about the COVID vaccine and saying, look, this is a vaccine that has been developed too fast, normally it should take this long, and this is what is happening. Look at how much we are being charged. The West is obtaining this vaccine at how much vis-a-vis the third world countries that are going to access this thing at X amount of money. There is all this imbalance. So look, we need to push back to the West. That is one conversation altogether. The conversation that Magufuli is raising is adding